Chapter 13, Songlang Mountain Range. Chapter 13, Songlang Mountain Range. Su Zimo took the chance to return to the cultivation field when it was still dark. At the sight of Daiyu, he asked, "Miss Dai, I have already mastered body tempering. Although I have only attained initial success, I should have some chances of defeating the level 1 Chi Refinement Warrior." You will die for sure." Daiyu glanced at Su Zimo and said coldly. Su Zimo stood dazedly on the ground. He could not hide the disappointment in his eyes. He had felt quite disdainful when he heard Uncle Zheng's words earlier, as he thought that he could suppress the Chi Refinement Warrior easily. He did not expect. As such, doubts rose in Su Zimo's heart at this moment. Since demon cultivation was also a form of the cultivation of Tao, why was it that he could not even defeat a level 1 Chi Refinement Warrior? Daiyu seemed to have read Su Zimo's mind. She said nonchalantly, "Your current strength is enough to kill a level 4 Chi Refinement Warrior. However, you don't have a good understanding of combat. There are too many factors that can influence combat, and strength is only one of them. Kill a level 4 Chi Refinement Warrior." Su Zimo was stunned. He gradually recovered from his senses. So, it was not that he was not powerful enough, but because he lacked the combat techniques. It was akin to a peerless knife that would unleash varying degrees of potency, depending on whose hands it landed in. Since that was the case, Su Zimo still felt a little indignant. He raised his voice, "I know a little about fighting. When I was rounded up by hundreds of pugilistic experts, I can also carve out a path amidst the adversity. You have been beaten up so miserably by a group of mortals. Yet, you think that it is something worth bragging about it?" Daiyu sneered. She waved her hands lightly. Seemingly led by an invisible force, the thunderbolt saber that was initially pierced in the ground rose and floated in the air. Gee! A few feet away, Daiyu stretched out her finger and pointed at Su Zimo's direction. Swoosh! Blades of light flashed. The thunderbolt saber had already appeared in front of Su Zimo's eyes. It was hanging in front of his glabella without moving an inch. It was too fast. He did not even have the time to react. Daiyu said with a lazy drawl, "This is the most common attack stroke of Chi Refinement Warrior, making use of Spirit Chi to control the spirit weapon. If you are fighting with the Chi Refinement Warrior, you will be dead meat by now." So fast? How do I dodge it?" Su Zimo was a little dazed. Daiyu said, "There are two abilities in Demon that are far beyond that of the cultivators. First, a strong and powerful body. Second, an acute spirit perception. You must remember, most of the cultivators' bodies are relatively weak. As long as you can avert their first wave of attack and take the chance to shorten the distance between the both of you, you will be able to make use of the strong and powerful close combat ability of the Demon Clan to slay them." Su Zimo frowned and pondered deeply. After some time, he asked, "I understand what is meant by strong and powerful body. The objective of body tempering is to train the body. But what is spirit perception?" Daiyu said, "It is hard to explain spirit perception. You can take it that it meant alertness and sense of danger. The Demon Clan believed in jungle laws and the survival of the fittest. If you don't have a keen spirit perception, you will be eliminated and your entire family annihilated. The cicada senses it before the autumn wind approaches." Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly. Daiyu nodded. "How do I cultivate the spirit perception?" Su Zimo asked again. "Simple." The corners of Daiyu's mouth curled up slightly. With an odd smile, she suddenly waved the sleeves of her robes and swirled towards Su Zimo. Swoosh! Space became contorted and everything turned black. Su Zimo felt that he had lost all his senses. In the next moment, it seemed that he had been brought to another place. Where am I? After Su Zimo regained his senses, he looked around. There was pin-drop silence in the surroundings. It was pitch black and exuding an aura of primitive wilderness. A peculiar atmosphere filled the air. Daiyu casually said, "This is the Songlang Mountain Range. If you can survive here for 1 year, you will have successfully cultivated the spirit perception." Su Zimo was stunned. The Songlang Mountain Range was about a few tens of kilometers from Pingyang Town. It was famous for being a dangerous terrain, dominated by demons and beasts There was danger at every step. There was absolutely no way that one could pass through this place at night. Previously, he had heard many legends about the Canglang mountain range. There were fiendish demons that suck in human essence and energy, as well as fearsome beasts with eyes like bronze bells. Of course, the lord of Canglang mountain range were the wolves, which were the majority. Bloodthirsty and brutal, they definitely bore grudges. A few decades ago, a hunter from a nearby village caught a small wolf from Canglang mountain range. Unexpectedly, that same night, the entire village had been devoured and wiped out by thousands of wolves. Even fowls and dogs were not spared. It had become a ghostly village that no one dared to live at. The surrounding states could not do anything about the Canglang mountain range. None of the armies dared to venture deep into the place. Not to mention surviving in it. It was as difficult as reaching the sky just to pass through it safely and unscathed. Dayu continued to say, there is a difference in realms between the demons too. Those at the lowest realm are not even qualified to be called a demon. They are termed as spirit beasts in the cultivation arena, meaning they are beasts that can understand humans. There are weak and strong spirit beasts. That Xue Feng of yours is considered the weakest kind of spirit beast. Its spirit intellect had just been activated. For powerful spirit beasts, their ability is comparable to a perfected Qi refinement warrior. Above the spirit beast is the spirit demon. There is an even greater gap between the weak and strong ones. The strong ones are comparable to perfected golden core. The weak ones are equivalent to foundation establishment cultivators. Suzimo frowned and asked, are there spirit demons in Canglang mountain range? According to Dayu, he could not even defeat the most commonplace Qi refinement warrior, let alone the spirit demons whose abilities were equivalent to the foundation establishment and golden core realms. I don't know. Dayu smiled imperceptibly. Suzimo was stunned. What kind of answer was that? Suzimo believed that it was impossible that Dayu did not know. The only possibility was that Dayu did not wish to tell him. Dayu said calmly, this is a test. If you can survive, you will completely transform and unleash the true powers of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. If you can't endure it, you will no doubt be shared and devoured by the spirit demons. Everything will end then. Suzimo realized that if he were to survive in the Canglang mountain range for 1 year, he would definitely face various kinds of spirit beasts. Danger would be lurking in every corner. This was a cruel test. Of course, it was also a form of training. A life and death experience. In the moments of struggle between life and death, one could mold a strong and powerful spirit perception. Dayu said, it's not too late to regret now. If you decide to stay here, I won't take care of you. If I don't see you in Pingyang town 1 year later, I will leave on my own. Regret? Suzimo smiled. Be it Zhou Dingyun who could come back to look for him at any point in time, the enemy of the Su family, or to seek revenge for Xue Feng, he did not have a choice. I will return alive in 1 year's time. In the darkness, Suzimo's eyes were bright and clear, and firm and resolute. He requested a brush and paper from Dayu, and wrote the words, I will be away for some matters. Please don't miss me. Suzimo folded the paper and passed it to Dayu. He said, find a way to send this to the Su residence. Uncle Zhang recognizes my handwriting. Dayu nodded and said, there are still 3 hours to dawn. I will impart the Tendon's transformation section to you and leave before dawn. You only have 3 hours to cultivate. Make full use of the time. A page of sutra verses appeared in Suzimo's mind again. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Body tempering is the foundation. If the flesh and skin are not hard and strong enough, when one cultivate Tendon's transformation, the body will swell and explode amidst the contraction, expansion, and pulsation of the large tendons. The cultivator will become paralyzed. The Tendon's transformation method originates from the Anaconda Demon King and the Sanguine Ape Demon King. Cultivate the Anaconda section, followed by the Ape section. Anaconda is the most agile one. It has the ability to cut swathes, twist and coil as well as bend and stretch. Apes are adept at climbing the mountains and ascending the rocks. Upon the initial success of Tendon's transformation, the body's resilience will increase tremendously. It will be as agile as the python and as light as the ape. It will rise like the wind and fall like an arrow. Your strength will also increase. The pulsating sound of the large tendons will be similar to that of the vibration of bowstrings. Upon phenomenal success, the three body parts, skin, flesh, and tendons, will be in perfect harmony. One will be able to expand and contract the muscles and change his figure or appearance. No one will be able to see through him unless the perfected nascent soul make use of his detection methods to do so. Yao spoke about the profound meaning of Tendon's transformation tirelessly. In the deep forest, it was dark and silent. Even the cicadas were not making any sound. It was only resonating with the pleasant and lazy-sounding voice of a lady. The green-robed scholar beside the lady was focused and listening attentively. Time passed, and the dark sky gradually faded. When the first ray of sunlight broke through the mist and landed in the forest, Yao stopped and turned to Suzimo. She said softly, "I'm leaving." In Suzimo's memory, he had never seen Yao speaking to him with such a tone. For some unknown reason, there was a strange feeling in Suzimo's heart. As if he had been possessed, Suzimo asked, "If I encounter any danger, will you really leave me in the lurch?" Suzimo regretted as soon as he finished his words. True enough, Yao sneered. "What has your life and death got to do with me?" These words seemed very cold-blooded and inhuman. After inviting a snub, Suzimo looked embarrassed. He was silent. Yao turned and left. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the dense forest. Suzimo's lonely figure remained rooted to the ground. Just as Suzimo was feeling a little disappointed, Yao's voice rang again. It became increasingly distant and gradually faded off. Songlang Mountain Range is the world of demons, especially at night. If you can tide over the first month, you will have 30% chances of leaving it alive in 1 year's time. Suzimo was stunned. No matter what, Yao was not completely unconcerned about him. Otherwise, there was no need for her to impart the Tendon's transformation to him last night. There is only a 30% chance of survival after enduring the first month. Suzimo was secretly shocked. He assessed the surroundings with vigilance. After confirming the absence of danger, he tied the Thunderbolt saber on his back and sat cross-legged to recall the contents of the Tendon's Transformation Sutra. If he wished to survive in the Songlang Mountain Range, he would have to master the Tendon's transformation as soon as possible. According to Yao, his ability would be of a threat to the level 8 Qi Refinement Warrior upon attaining the initial success of Tendon's transformation. This also meant that he could slay most of the spirit beasts in the Songlang Mountain Range. His chance of survival would increase tremendously. Suzimo constantly used the breathing and expiration method and diligently tried to comprehend the Tendon's transformation. It could be due to the foundation of the body tempering or the pressure of being in danger. Not long after, Suzimo managed to master the initial stage of the Tendon's transformation breathing method. He did not need Yao's reminder this time. Suzimo combined the sutras of both body tempering and Tendon's transformation and cultivated them simultaneously. With each breathing and expiration, Suzimo was hardening and refining not only his flesh and blood, but also his large tendons. He had become more flexible and powerful. Suzimo was immersed in the cultivation and had forgotten his whereabouts. After an unknown period of time, Suzimo suddenly felt a liquid-like substance dropping onto his face. It felt a little warm and sticky. Is it raining? Just as this thought arose, Suzimo opened both his eyes immediately. His countenance changed greatly. Wrong. How could raindrops feel warm and sticky? Suzimo was instantly jolted awake. He finally realized that he was in the danger-filled Songlang Mountain Range and not the original cultivation field. There was danger. Chapter 14. Fiendish Appearance. Chapter 14. Fiendish Appearance. Unprecedented feelings of fear arose, and Suzimo felt his scalp blistering. He had goosebumps all over his body. Suzimo's reflexes kicked in, and both his lower limbs moved to flee before he even stood up completely. Swoosh! A malicious and stinking breeze attacked in his direction, and Su Zimo dodged it just in time. He could not help but look back. Su Zimo's pupils contracted violently. Instantly, his heart was in his throat. This was an anaconda that was beyond Su Zimo's recognition. Its humongous body was as thick as a water barrel, covered tightly with scales. Its body shone with a cold and metallic luster. It was glaring at Su Zimo with greenish, squinted eyes and big predaceous mouth. Saliva was continuously dripping from in between its teeth. He was too careless. Su Zimo still had some lingering fear. He had been approached by such a large species, and he actually did not sense it at all. The anaconda curled itself around an old tree that was as tall as the clouds and looked down at Su Zimo from the great heights. There was a flash of contempt in his eyes. This was a spirit beast. This kind of human-like glances appeared in an anaconda. It was evident that it was psychic and as intelligent as humans. It was just that it could not speak human language. Although there was a huge gap in size between the python and human, Su Zimo did not look the slightest bit afraid after he calmed down. On the contrary, he was very eager to try. This was a rare opportunity. The python's gaze was cold and sinister. It attacked first. The humongous body dropped onto the ground and twisted a few times in the grass. All was quiet. In the blink of an eye, it had slithered to Su Zimo with intelligent movements and lightning speed. Oh no! Su Zimo had a great shock. The anaconda slithered over, erratically moving its head. In that instance, he suddenly found it difficult to grasp the chance and had to abolish all of his original plans. If he were to fail in his first strike, he would undoubtedly die. In between flashes of light and stones on fire, Su Zimo exerted strength on both his lower limbs. His body backed off rapidly and averted the attacks. At this moment, a surge of evil aura that was as resilient as a knife swept over. Before he could react, his body had been hit firmly at the sweep of the python's tail and was thrown off. Bang! 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 After crashing into and breaking 3 old trees consecutively, Su Zimo fell onto the ground and vomited a mouthful of blood. His face was as white as a sheet. This collision had injured him greatly. At this moment, Su Zimo felt that the tendons and bones in his body were about to shatter. The pain was unbearable, and he simply did not have any more energy to fight. A difference of 1 stroke actually landed me in such a miserable state. Before he could finish this thought, he sighted the anaconda chasing closely and pouncing on him again. A black shadow engulfed him. Su Zimo gritted his teeth, twisted his arm, pulled out the thunderbolt saber on his back and slashed forward with all his might. There were flashes of blood. The anaconda gave a sorrowful cry. A bloody wound appeared on its head. One of the eyes was already blinded. Having suffered such a grievous injury, the humongous body of the anaconda tossed and twisted continuously, causing the surrounding trees to break one by one. The sound and atmosphere was appalling. Su Zimo knew that he was definitely not a match for this anaconda despite the latter's injury. Their abilities were not on the same level. Furthermore, he was more seriously injured. If he were to receive another crazy whip by the anaconda, he would definitely die on the spot. Su Zimo dared not stay any longer. He fled quickly using the plow heaven stride. Before he could run far, he felt drained of energy. His chest felt stifled. He could not help but spit out another mouthful of fresh blood. In the battle at the Zhao family, he was covered in blood, but they were caused by external injuries. The Khanate expert strength was not powerful enough to penetrate his skin and flesh. However, the tail of this anaconda not only mangled his chest but also injured his internal organs. If Su Zimo had not used the body petrification, that strike was enough to blast his body. Am I going to be buried in this place on the very first day? Su Zimo bit the tip of his tongue and tried hard to stay sober. He quietly pondered and said, I must find a good place to hide as soon as possible. Otherwise, any spirit beast that I encounter can kill me easily. After running for a while, he sighted a steep mountain wall in front of him. There was a cave on it a few feet from the ground. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. He arrived at the mountain wall and used the thunderbolt saber to dent the walls as he climbed up. Stepping on these dents, Su Zimo climbed up the mountain wall and carefully peeped into the cave. He flipped inside after ascertaining that there was no danger. This torture had already exhausted his last bit of strength. The cave was not big and could barely fit 3 people. Fortunately, the location was not bad and could avoid most of the terrestrial beasts. Su Zimo lay in the cave and tried to perk himself up. He used the breathing and expiration method continuously and the healing power of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to recover from his injuries. Time passed quickly and the sun was gradually setting. When Su Zimo was following Dayu on the first night, he did not feel the horror of the Canglang mountain range. Last night, there was complete silence. It was as if all the living things had gone into hiding. Today, the night had just arrived and spirit beasts were already beginning to appear. Sounds of roars shook the wilderness. From time to time, giant birds would fly past the mountain wall, casting their shadows and blocking the moon. In the forest, the spirit beasts prowled fearlessly. The old trees swayed and an eerie atmosphere filled the air. There were constant sounds of terrifying roars. This was the true colors of Canglang mountain range. If Dayu was not accompanying him last night, he could not even tide over it. Earlier on, Su Zimo saw for himself a spider with a human face as big as a basin. It moved at lightning speed as it climbed towards this wall mountain. To his surprise, a black figure suddenly appeared on the wall mountain, rolled into the spider's body, and disappeared in between the cracks of the rocks. When Su Zimo was fear-stricken, he heard a ferocious roar from the sky. Immediately after, a divine eagle with a pair of purple wings appeared out of nowhere. Its super-sharp claws were shining coldly like daggers. It dug into the cracks of the rocks on the wall mountain and crushed a big piece of rock. Roar! A miserable cry could be heard from the crack of the rocks. The purple-winged eagle had already captured a crawling spirit beast. Its claws pierced deeply into the body of the spirit beast and fresh blood splattered out. This spirit beast was huge. It was 100-fold bigger than the purple-winged eagle. However, it could not escape no matter how it struggled. The purple-winged eagle carried it and soared into the sky. Before it left, the purple-winged eagle had obviously discovered Su Zimo. It even glanced back at the cave on the wall mountain with a chilling glare. It could be that Su Zimo seemed too frail and weak in comparison to that spirit beast. Hence, the purple-winged eagle did not bother. It spread its wings and flew away. That one gaze was enough to land him in trepidation and send chills up his spine. This was a spirit demon. This purple-winged eagle was definitely a spirit demon. It is too powerful. Just the aura that it exuded could make me feel defenseless. I don't know if it is a spirit demon at the Foundation Establishment realm or Golden Core realm. Su Zimo swallowed the lump in his throat. He shifted himself deeper into the cave. In the forest under the wall mountain, there were killings everywhere. The air was moist and filled with a bloody stench. The earlier scene was just the tip of the iceberg. This was the Canglang mountain range. Bloody, brutal, and filled with the most primitive slaughters. After surviving the second night with much difficulty, Su Zimo discovered that there was another test awaiting him. One night had passed, but his injuries had not completely recovered. Hence, he dared not continue to cultivate. In Pingyang Town, he did not need to worry about food. However, food had become his greatest problem in Canglang mountain range. Su Zimo was injured and dared not act rashly. However, without food, each time he breathed in and out, he was using the essence of his own blood and flesh to cultivate. His hunger would increase, and he would not be able to endure for too long. It was a vicious cycle. Without food, there was no energy source, and he would not be able to cultivate. It would be difficult to heal the injuries on his body and advance to another realm. It was even harder to obtain food. Henceforth, every step that he took would determine his destiny. Su Zimo moved his body and used the thunderbolt saber to dig and deepen the cave. He placed some leaves and branches near the entrance of the cave to camouflage it and hide himself. 1 day, 2 days, Despite the torture of starvation and pain arising from his injuries, Su Zimo waited patiently and did not leave the cave. On the third day, he finally received an opportunity to turn the tides. Last night, there were many killings below the mountain wall. One of the spirit beasts died, and a lot of flesh and blood were left on its dead body. Su Zimo stared at the remains of the spirit demon for a long time. After much consideration, he finally made up his mind and walked out of the cave, carrying the thunderbolt saber. Worried that he would attract other spirit beasts, Su Zimo dared not start a fire. He bore with the disgust and devoured the flesh and blood mouthful by mouthful. His eyes surveyed the surroundings continuously, and he was high-strung. He dared not bring this spirit beast back to the cave, for fear that the bloody stench would expose the location of his cave. Only 3 days had passed, and his scholarly aura and inexperience subsided. He was strangely calm, as if he belonged to the most primitive human clan. He cautiously struggled to survive in the bleak and remote land, devouring raw flesh and drinking blood. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo's appetite had increased greatly. Soon after, he finished off the flesh and blood on this spirit beast. After returning to the cave, he began to cultivate. He discovered the difference when he cultivated. The energy essence contained in the flesh and blood of the spirit beast was richer than that of ordinary cattle and sheep. Taking in this raw flesh and blood allowed the essence to be absorbed into his belly directly without any wastage. Prior to this, after Su Zimo consumed 1 cattle, he would cultivate and drain all the energy from the flesh and blood in just half a day. On this occasion, he cultivated for 1 entire day and night. Of course, the benefit was evident. The injuries caused by the anaconda had completely healed. In addition, the body tempering and tendons transformation realms had advanced substantially. In the time to come, Su Zimo did not venture too far away. He spent most of his time cultivating the tendons transformation in the cave. Occasionally, he would secretly observe the killing techniques of the spirit beast below the mountain wall to comprehend them. After he felt that he had learned something, Su Zimo left the cave to hunt and kill spirit beasts to nurture his spirit perception and polish his martial skills. Although he suffered more losses than victories, was unkempt and covered in wounds at times, Su Zimo could always escape alive with body tempering and tendons transformation as the foundation. In between life and death struggles, he constantly concluded, comprehended, and cultivated. 3 months later, Su Zimo returned to the old place and looked for that anaconda. He then slayed it with his bare hands. Henceforth, Su Zimo completely left the cave that he had been living in. He wandered in countless mountains and ravines, traveled in dense forests and big pools, and engaged in combat with various kinds of birds and spirit beasts. This was a bloodshed world about the survival of the fittest. The so-called most powerful one did not exist. In one moment, one was proud and majestic. In the next moment, he could possibly end up as a prey in the belly of other spirit beasts. There were countless miserable and intensive bloody battles, countless narrow escapes from death, constant vigilance, and constantly on tenterhooks. As time passed by, Su Zimo acquired a unique and indescribable sense of danger. That was spirit perception. In this mountain range that no one paid attention to, a young boy from the human clan without spirit root was undergoing a thorough transformation. A fiendish appearance was taking root. Chapter 15. A Bloody Battle with the Wolves. Chapter 15. A Bloody Battle with the Wolves. 6 months later. In the residence of the city lord of Canglang City, Luo Tianwu, the city lord of Canglang City, leaned on his chair. Holding on to his chin, his eyes were closed. He was frowning and deep in thought. "City lord, did you request for my presence?" Shortly after, Chao Gang, one of the 5 wolf guards, walked in, cupped his fists and bowed to him respectfully. Luo Tianwu opened his eyes. A beam of light streaked across them, but only lasted for a moment. He asked, seemingly casual, "What are your thoughts on the Su family of Pingyang Town?" Chao Gang pondered and said, "The Su family's background is mysterious. Most likely, they are not from our country of Dachi. I suspect that they are from the country of Yin. In addition, the Su family is not as weak as they appear to be." Young Master Su had hidden his ability for many years. He is a figure not to be underestimated. He is most probably hatching a major ploy. As for second young Master Su, Chao Gang paused for a while. Luo Tianwu revealed a look of curiosity. He smiled imperceptibly and asked, "What about second young Master Su?" 1 year ago, I witnessed second young Master Su offending the immortal. Chao Gang shook his head. This lad is an inexperienced and aggressive youngster. He is initially quite clever and has also attained scholarly honors. His honors had been written off now, and he is reduced to an inferior commoner. We don't need to bother about him. Quite clever? Haha. Luo Tianwu smirked. Chao Gang, your judgment is off this time. Huh. Chao Gang was stunned for a moment. This is the information from my subordinate spy. Take a look. Luo Tianwu passed a few confidential papers on the table to Chao Gang. Chao Gang swept his gaze across them. His expression gradually changed. Luo Tianwu said in a low voice, 6 months ago, Su Zimo almost destroyed all the pugilistic experts of the Li family and Zhao family relying on his own strength. These two families have virtually been wiped out, although their names still exist. The Yang family avoided the disaster and took the chance to fawn on the Su family. Now, the Su family is holding the power in Pingyang town. This individual is not a frail scholar. He is a character who is more terrifying than Su Hong. How can this be possible? Chao Gang was dumbstruck. Luo Tianwu said, there are 2 possibilities. First, Su Zimo transformed from a frail scholar to a top-notch expert in 6 months' time. Second, Su Zimo concealed his abilities and lied to everyone. Regardless of the possibility, this individual is not a mediocre character. What exactly is this Su family plotting at? Chao Gang drew his brows together. Luo Tianwu snarled, people from country of Yin. 15 years ago, by the last name of Su. Combining these few pieces of information, can't you guess? Lord Wooding of the country of Yin, Su Mu. Chao Gang said, his voice trailing off. Luo Tianwu nodded and said regretfully, Su Mu is considered an outstanding hero. He led tens of thousands of armored cavalry and dominated the battlefields, sweeping up victories wherever they went. How famous and majestic was he then? Which of the surrounding states dared to launch attacks and take over the glory? Unfortunately, he was too foolish. In the end, his outcome was akin to casting the bows aside once the birds are gone and slaying the lackeys after they have outlived their usefulness. After pausing shortly, Luo Tianwu closed both his eyes, exuding a sharp and imposing aura. He gradually said, since there is a lesson drawn from others' mistakes, we can't follow the footsteps of Su Mu. Although the great Zhou King is ruling the 4 states, there are signs of chaos. The dukes are rising in power. It is time to invade the city, seize the territory and declare ourselves as the king. Chao Gang is willing to obey the city lord, obey the king. Chao Gang was quick to adapt to the circumstance. He changed his address immediately. Luo Tianwu nodded satisfactorily. He said, Chao Gang, I also have Qi refinement warriors as my backers. I won't act without confidence. At the sound of the 3 words, Qi refinement warrior, Chao Gang's eyes lit up and his mood livened up. Since the Su family has such a background, we can make use of them. Luo Tianwu revealed a playful smile. In the Canglang mountain range. After 6 months of wandering in the wilderness, Su Zimo had made tremendous progress in the realm of Tenden's transformation. He was close to initial success. After cultivating the anaconda styles, he had begun to cultivate the ape styles. Most importantly, Su Zimo now possessed a spirit perception that was skin to that of a beast. He was extraordinarily sharp and sensitive. Relying on the spirit perception, Su Zimo had countless narrow escapes from deaths. He even got away from some spirit demons before. However, in the recent 1 month, Su Zimo encountered some trouble. The lord of Canglang mountain range, the Wolf clan, that had an astronomical number of members. Zimo encountered a wolf preciously. After a bloody battle, he killed it but unexpectedly provoked the endless hunting by the wolves. If he were to fight them on one-on-one, most of the wolves were not Zimo's match. However, the most terrifying thing about the wolf clan was their patience and acute sense of smell. Zimo had escaped from the packs of wolves countless times, but not long after, the wolves would hunt him down again with their keen sense of smell. This manhunt continued for 1 month. If Zimo's body was not strong enough or did not have the foundation of the 2 classic demon sections, body tempering and tendons transformation, he would have most probably died of exhaustion. In the long and endless escape, Zimo's clothes had long been torn by the spirit beasts during the combats. He was dressed in the random pieces of beast skins and had a gray stubble on his face. He did not look any different from a wild man. In the recent few days, the wolf clan seemed to have sensed that Zimo's physique had reached its limit. They hunted him even more closely and harassed him repeatedly. Zimo had a few terrifying wounds on his body. Although the bleeding had stopped, they had not healed completely. The wolf packs did not give Zimo any time to recover from his injuries at all. Zimo clearly knew that his condition would only worsen if this were to continue, but he could not think of any solution to get away from the hunt of the wolf clan. This night, Zimo arrived at a valley. Midway at the valley, he stopped in his tracks suddenly. His expression was grave. The cold breeze in his face carried traces of murderous aura. Behind him, pairs of greenish and sinister eyes of wolves appeared. Ferocious gazes were apparent. Wolves walked out from the darkness, filled the entire place, and rounded up Zimo, who was in the center. On the 2 sides of the valley, there were also many wolves. They were howling at the moon. "You are finally here." Zimo licked his dry and chapped lips. His eyes were filled with a murderous intent. 1 month of sleepless and restless nights had reduced Zimo's spirit perception to its worst state. As a result, he had fallen into the situation of being rounded up by the wolf packs. Of course, this period of killing and escape were enough to prove the wits of the wolves. The current situation was also meticulously set up by them. When Zimo's strength, energy, and all areas were reduced to their worst states, the wolf packs then launched the final battle. Prior to this, Zimo hardly used his saber. On the one hand, he did not know the techniques of using one. On the other hand, he wanted to hone his close combat skills as much as possible. Now, Zimo used a backhand grip and pulled out the Thunderbolt saber in preparation for the last gamble. Howl! The leader of the wolf pack howled on the top of the valley. The wolves on the 2 sides as well as front and back of the valley swarmed in like bees. Poof! Zimo flipped his hands and slashed. He slayed the first wolf that dashed to him into half. Fresh blood was spilling out crazily. Bang! Zimo used the ground-rupturing palm with his right hand and smashed the skull of another wolf with all his might, splitting the latter's brains. The killings could not stop the wolves from advancing. On the contrary, it provoked their ferocious nature. Stepping on the corpses of their own clan, the wolves pounced on him continuously. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Zimo began to use the plow heaven stride. Carrying the saber in his left hand, punching with his right hand, he dashed across the valley with ease, attacking on his left side and charging on his right. If one was watching the combat by the side, he would be shocked at a discovery. Despite being attacked and round up by dense packs of wolves, Zimo could still avert most of the attacks and avoid injuries to the vital points of his body. At the sight of the sharp wolf claws about to pierce into Zimo's head, without even looking, he suddenly dodged, punched with his backhand, and hurled off a wolf. This was spirit perception. It could sense and avert danger without even looking or listening. In comparison to half a year ago, Zimo's methods had become more simple, direct, and succinct. Nevertheless, they were extremely effective. Zimo was no longer restrained in his styles. His head, shoulder, wrist, fist, knee, and back could all be used to kill the enemies. This was the close combat techniques that he had honed during the fights. It was filled with the smell of blood. It was swift, sharp, fearsome, and merciless. Pierce. There was now an additional wound on Su Zimo's body. Fresh blood was dripping from it. Although he had the aid of the powerful spirit perception, Su Zimo's body gradually lost its strength under such successive and intense attacks. After a round of fierce and violent killings, the wounds that had not fully healed burst open. Blood was spilling nonstop, causing disharmony in his vital energy and blood flow. Su Zimo felt dizzy and was seeing some stars. I can't hang on for too long. Su Zimo gnashed his teeth and stared at the leader of the wolf pack, which was not too far away. It was about 1 foot tall and the size of a huge elephant. Ignoring the attacks from both sides, he charged forward with all his might with the plow heaven stride. Mountain reliance. Bang, bang, bang. A few wolves collided with one another on the spot, spitting blood everywhere. At the same time, Su Zimo also received rampant attacks and suffered many injuries. A piece of his flesh had been torn off by one wolf. Su Zimo's legs wobbled, and he nearly knelt on the ground. Seemingly sensing Su Zimo's intent, there was a flash of mockery in the eyes of the lead wolf, whose entire body was as white as snow. At this moment, the wolf packs dispersed, and the lead wolf gradually made his way over like a victor. He was exuding an endless aura of murderous intent. Su Zimo stared at the approaching wolf. The palm of his left hand carrying the sword was drenched in sweat. He quietly took a deep breath, in preparation for the last strike. Today, it was hard for him to escape death. If he could slay the lead wolf before he perished, he considered himself to have gained something. Swoosh! The lead wolf leaped vertically. A violent aura enshrouded the air and charged towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo opened his mouth and took a deep breath, seemingly devouring the sun and the moon. He lifted his chest high. The pulsation of his flesh and blood was visible on the surface of his skin. The large tendons were knotted together, seemingly coiled by countless anacondas. PSSD. Flows of air surged into his lungs crazily, giving out a strange noise. Anaconda eclipse. This was one of the styles of the tendon's transformation section. It enlarged the large tendons and could unleash mighty powers instantly. Su Zimo lifted the thunderbolt saber using one hand, dashed directly to the lead wolf and aimed for its head. At the same time, his right hand threw a surprise attack with the ground-rupturing palm. This was already considered Su Zimo's most powerful strike. There was a flash of fear in the lead wolf's eyes. The humongous figure was extremely agile. It dodged in the air to avoid the thunderbolt saber coming towards him and landed his claw on Su Zimo's chest. Initially, this claw could penetrate Su Zimo's chest directly. However, Su Zimo had smashed his hand on the side of the wolf's body with the ground-rupturing palm at the same time. Roar! The lead wolf howled in pain. It was flung by Su Zimo. After rolling on the ground once, it climbed up rapidly and shook its head, seemingly fine. Su Zimo had already ran out of ideas and energy. Although the sharp wolf claws did not punch through his chest, it had mangled it. Su Zimo was thrown off by the explosive impact from the lead wolf's blow. He looked like a kite with broken strings as he tossed up and then dropped down towards the pack of wolves. Su Zimo had lost all his strength. He swept his gaze across. Beneath him, numerous wolves were salivating and opening their mouth, waiting for the moment that he dropped to tear him to pieces. In the end, I still didn't overcome this. Su Zimo began to feel dazed. At the sight of Su Zimo falling into the pack of wolves, a figure suddenly flashed in the darkness and swayed past him midair. It took Su Zimo away from the corners of the mouths of the wolves in passing. Chapter 16. Scarlet Flame Fruit. Chapter 16. Scarlet Flame Fruit. Misty? Su Zimo was startled awake and immediately refuted this thought. A tall, large, and strong-built figure was approaching him. He was covered in long hair and smelled nauseating. How could that be Dayu? Su Zimo struggled to open his eyes to catch a clearer glimpse of the person's looks. However, a gush of fatigue overtook him. Su Zimo's vision was getting increasingly blurry. He could vaguely see the dark figure grabbing onto things and swinging to and fro above the valley, his movements extremely swift, agile, and light. Shortly after, he had reached the hill top of the valley and got away from the wolf pack's encirclement. Jie, Jie. The black figure looked back at the numerous wolves in the valley and gave out an eerie laughter. Thereafter, carrying Su Zimo, with 2 to 3 moves at a time, he disappeared into the forest. Not knowing how long had passed, Su Zimo gradually regained his consciousness and struggled to sit up. He was in pain all over and his muscles were numb and aching. Su Zimo looked down and saw that some unknown herbs had been applied on his wounds. They felt light and cool. The rest of the body parts without injuries had also been smeared with some unknown material that emitted a foul and repulsive stench. Su Zimo drew his brows and looked around. This was a rather wide and spacious cave without an extraordinary appearance. However, many wolf skins were hanging on the walls. At this moment, gurgling sounds could be heard coming from the entrance of the cave. A tall and big figure snuggled in. The way he walked was a little odd. He seemed to be tiptoeing and leaping. Su Zimo focused his sight and was stunned on the spot. What came in was not a man but a monkey. He had actually been saved by a monkey. Su Zimo's mood was a little complicated. During the past 6 months at Songlang Mountain Range, there were at least 800 to 1,000 spirit beasts that died in his hands. He did not expect himself to be saved by a spirit monkey in the end. This spirit monkey looked very ordinary. It had super long forelimbs that exceeded the knees when hung down. A dot of red light was swirling in the depths of his eyes. It was a little strange and mysterious. "Thank you." Su Zimo cupped his fists at the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey pursed his lips in a human-like manner. He did not reciprocate Su Zimo's gratitude. It waved its hands, pointed at the wolf skins on the wall, and chattered, "Walla walla," for some time. Lastly, the spirit monkey pointed at Su Zimo, extended one of its fingers, and swaying it from side to side in a mocking manner. It was spiritually enlightened. Besides not knowing how to speak, this spirit monkey was no different from an ordinary man. The spirit monkey could convey the emotions of an adult perfectly with gestures and expressions. Su Zimo could not stifle his laughter. He tried to probe by asking, "Do you mean to say that you didn't wish to save me at all? It is because you have an enmity with these wolves?" The spirit monkey opened his mouth and smiled. It nodded. "Since that is the case, we have a common enemy. We can join forces in the future." Su Zimo had been enduring loneliness in the Songlang mountain range for the past 6 months. He also wished to have someone that he could talk to. The spirit monkey before him was extremely intelligent and was no different from a human. It would make an excellent confidant. Spat. The spirit monkey spat and gave a disdainful look. He made a gesture, showing his contempt to Su Zimo, seemingly mocking Su Zimo for being too weak. Su Zimo was stunned and speechless. He had been looked down on by a monkey. After all, it was his savior monkey. Hence, it was not good for Su Zimo to say anything. He looked a little awkward. Su Zimo glanced at the sky through the cave entrance. Suddenly, a doubt arose in his heart. He had been unconscious for at least 1 day. This time, the wolf packs actually did not chase over. At the smell of that pungent stench on his body, Su Zimo's eyes shone. He could not help asking, "Do you have a way to cover my body smell to avoid the wolves' sense of smell?" Gaga gaga. Upon hearing this question, the spirit monkey opened his big mouth and laughed complacently. His eyes were filled with mockery and laughter. Looking at the spirit monkey, Su Zimo suddenly had a bad premonition. Thereafter, he saw the spirit monkey bending and squatting down, showing the posture of passing motion and placing his palms to catch something below his butt. He then wiped the mess all over his body. "The thing that is smeared on my body is your poop?" Su Zimo turned pale. He asked after much difficulty. Gagaga. The spirit beast lifted his head and laughed out loud. He waved his arms and skipped around, as if he had done something proud and great. Su Zimo had the feeling of being struck by lightning. He endured the urge to sprout profanities, gnash his teeth and say, word by word, "You? This damn money. I." At the sight of Su Zimo's disgust, the spirit monkey looked even more delighted. He chattered wah, wah, nonstop and was extremely thrilled. Su Zimo gritted his teeth and said, "Damn monkey, I will definitely fight with you when I fully recover." The spirit monkey did not seem to care. It only stood on the same spot and laughed arrogantly while crossing its arms. Su Zimo was covered in pain and wounds. He could not do anything to the monkey for the time being. He lay down swiftly on the ground and tried to calm down. Just as he lay down, not far from his head, Su Zimo saw a red and lush fruit hanging and swaying slowly. It looked juicy and shiny and emitted a tempting fragrance. Su Zimo was thirsty and his mouth dry. Without thinking much, he stretched out his hands and stuffed the red fruit into his mouth. The flesh of the fruit softened as soon as it entered his mouth. The juice was refreshing and sweet, transforming into a surge of warmth into his tummy. The spirit monkey inadvertently witnessed this scene. Its pupils shrank. Sounds of its laughter ceased abruptly. Su Zimo sucked his lips, savoring the good taste of this fruit. When he wanted to look for another one of it, he suddenly sensed a murderous aura in the cave. The atmosphere seemed to have turned stiff. MMM? Su Zimo was stunned. He instinctively sat up, but nearly bumped into that big face of the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey glared at Su Zimo with bloodshot eyes, gnashing and clenching its teeth, panting heavily. It looked like it could not wait to tear Su Zimo apart alive. Su Zimo's heart stirred. He vaguely guessed that the fruit that he had eaten earlier was probably not ordinary. "Hey, you disgusted me once. I ate your fruit. We are even now." Su Zimo felt a little guilty. Oh. At the sound of Su Zimo's words, the spirit monkey was fuming with anger. He was so furious that he jumped up and pounded his chest, making deafening gwong, gwong sounds. The spirit monkey dashed towards the mountain wall beside him and hit his head against the wall. Rocks shattered and flew all over. The sound was terrifying. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. This spirit monkey was very powerful. He might not be its opponent even if he were to recover fully and was in his best condition. Fortunately, the spirit monkey did not vent its frustration on him. He continued to pound the mountain rocks and almost punched through the mountain walls. At this very moment, Su Zimo suddenly felt his belly warming up and turning boiling hot. Flows of warm air surged towards his limbs and bones, emitting endless flows of heat. Su Zimo's skin began to redden. It was as if a huge stove was inside him and barbecuing his body. The pain was unbearable. "Pest!" Su Zimo exhaled and looked down. He saw the flesh and blood surrounding his wounds throbbing, integrating and healing at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Only the scars remained thereafter. In the blink of an eye, the scars came off and the skin was rejuvenated to be like before. Even the piece of flesh on the thigh that had been torn by the wolves was repairing itself rapidly at this moment. "Ah!" Su Zimo hollered at the sky. He felt like he was exploding. "This is bad. This energy is too strong. My body will burst if this continues." Su Zimo did not have the time to think. He circulated body tempering and tendons transformation immediately and carried out the breathing and expiration techniques. At the same time, Su Zimo leaped up vertically with the plow heaven stride. He crazily dashed around the mountain cave, constantly practicing the styles of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. He wanted to vent out this surge of energy. The spirit monkey seemed to be shocked by this scene. He stopped rampaging all over the place. Stunned and with his jaws dropping, it stared at Su Zimo, who seemed even crazier than him. A huge surge of unbearable essence energy ran wildly in Su Zimo's body, constantly nourishing his body, refining, hardening his skin, and stretching his large tendons. He was advancing tremendously in the body tempering and tendons transformation realms. Zung, zung, zung. The large tendons in Su Zimo's body throbbed. Sounds of bowstring vibrations could be heard. Initial success of Tendon's transformation. The body's flexibility and agility had improved. His steps were apparently much swifter and lighter than before. His strength rose rapidly. According to Dayu, as long as he attained initial success of Tendon's transformation, Su Zimo's power was enough to be a threat to a level 8 Qi refinement warrior. Despite the case, Su Zimo still could not transform the huge source of essence in his body. Su Zimo's skin was torn apart and blood stains covered his body densely. It was a menacing and gruesome scene. What exactly is this thing? Su Zimo was terrified. He did not expect that casually taking a fruit almost caused him to lose his life. In fact, this red fruit was famous in the cultivation world. It was the spirit item, Scarlet Flame Fruit, whose flowers bloomed and bore fruit only once in 1,000 years. The Scarlet Flame Fruit contained strong and powerful essence. It was a huge tonic. Its medicinal properties were akin to fire. It was heady, dry, and explosive. No one dared to take it in its raw form. Most people would supplement it with other spirit medicine and refine it into elixirs to moderate the effect and make it convenient to consume too. If not for the fact that Su Zimo was cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and had a strong and powerful physique, he would have been consumed by the heat in the fruit and burnt to ashes the moment that he swallowed the Scarlet Flame Fruit. The spirit monkey had guarded the Scarlet Flame Fruit for many years. He was waiting for the Scarlet Flame Fruit to turn ripe in these few days. It initially intended to pick a date and consume this Scarlet Flame Fruit. Unexpectedly, it had been devoured by Su Zimo in one gulp. Neither the fruit nor skin was left. One could imagine how frustrated and upset the spirit monkey was earlier. It was just that, now, at the sight that Su Zimo was in so much pain, the spirit monkey was frightened. The spirit monkey was extremely intelligent. He could tell that if he was the one who consumed this Scarlet Flame Fruit, he would not end up in a better state. Most likely, he would perish. At the thought of this, the spirit monkey felt a little guilty. No matter what, this calamity of Su Zimo was caused by him. The spirit monkey scratched his ears and cheeks and looked at Su Zimo, who was in extraordinary pain and red all over. However, he could not think of any solution. Chapter 17, Under the Cold Lake. Chapter 17, Under the Cold Lake. Under the impact of the Scarlet Flame Fruit's searing essence, Su Zimo's blood was already boiling. Each time he breathed out, his nose would release a scarlet airstream. The lifespan of the perfected golden core was at most 500 years. A flower that blooms and bear only one fruit in 1,000 years. What kind of concept would this spirit item possess? This flow of energy was rich and massive. Su Zimo could not endure it at all. He should count his blessings on having sustained for 5 minutes with the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Ah! Su Zimo hollered at the sky. He had no place to vent out the energy in his body. It was such a torture that he wished to die. Bang! Su Zimo circulated all the energy in his body and executed mountain pressing. He bumped against the stone walls in the cave with all his might. One by one, many rocks cracked and fell to the ground. Bang! 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 Both Su Zimo's eyes were red. He repeatedly bumped against the stone walls, seemingly wanting to release all the energy in his body. Each time he bumped against the wall, the cave would shake violently, plummeting gravel. The cave looked like it was going to collapse at any point in time. If the cave were to collapse, it would be akin to a hilltop or object weighing up to 10,000s of pounds crashing down. No matter how strong one's body was, he would be crushed into mud. Death in this place was imminent for a man and a monkey. Su Zimo had already lost his sanity, but not the spirit monkey. Obviously, Su Zimo was going to die. He was neither relative nor acquaintance to the spirit monkey. They only met by chance. Escaping from this place as soon as possible would be the wisest option for the spirit monkey. However, there was a flash of worry in the spirit monkey's eyes at this juncture. The spirit monkey hesitated for a moment and did not choose to leave. Standing by the side, he was on pins and needles. He blinked his eyes constantly, seemingly hoping for a miracle to happen. Bang! Boom! Boom! At this moment, deafening sounds could be heard coming from the stone walls. The entire mountain trembled for a while. Oh! The eyes of the spirit monkey shone. He discovered that Suzimo's knock on this occasion had actually broke the cave's stone walls, and he had fallen into another cave. There was a cave within the cave. The spirit monkey quickened his steps and caught up with Suzimo. The second cave was narrow and small, and there was a small lake in the middle. The air was chilling and icy coldness penetrated one's bones. Before he could approach the cave, the spirit monkey was already shivering in the cold. He quickly halted his steps. The cool air emitted by the pond was extremely strong and even a little creepy. When the spirit monkey inched closer, a layer of frost appeared and was spreading slowly on his body's hair. Coldness penetrated him, as if countless steel needles were piercing through his blood and flesh. At this moment, Suzimo was burning all over. When he sensed the bone-chilling coldness, he did not resist. Instead, he stepped towards the cold lake. The coldness was overwhelming and unbearable. However, Suzimo, who had eaten the scarlet flame fruit by mistake, seemed to have innumerable flames burning in his body that could coincidentally offset the effect of the cold. Suzimo jumped directly into the cold lake. Thereafter, sizzling sounds could be heard as if a striking hot iron bar had been immersed into the icy water. Cold and hot, ice and fire. These two distinct forces collided in Suzimo's body. Suzimo rose and fell in the cold lake, his figure submerged and reappearing from time to time. Vapor rose and mist enshrouded. It felt like an immortal land. The spirit monkey stood and watched this scene from afar. He faintly guessed that Suzimo had already survived this calamity under a twist of circumstances. As the ancient saying goes, the antidote to any venomous poison will always be present in the latter's vicinity. Everything in the world mutually reinforced or countered each other. This was the order of nature that would never change. Since the cave had bred such a radical fruit like the scarlet flame fruit, a contrasted and radically cold item should be growing within the vicinity in accompaniment. Suzimo had taken the scarlet flame fruit by mistake and could not endure the massive energy. Nevertheless, he discovered the cold lake by chance and borrowed the coldness to suppress the searing essence and sealed it into every inch of his flesh and blood. These searing essence had not yet been dissipated from Suzimo's body. However, a huge treasure trove had been sealed in his body. Each time he cultivated, he would refine the essence within him until he drained the energy of the scarlet flame fruit. This was greatly beneficial to Suzimo in advancing in the realms in the future. From the moment that he leaped into the cold lake, Suzimo had already regained his senses. Soon after, he realized that the energy of the scarlet flame fruit no longer posed a threat as it had been sealed in his body. Suzimo wanted to jump out of the cold lake, but his heart suddenly wavered. Since this place could breed the scarlet flame fruit, could there be other such fruits breeding around the cold lake? The cave where the cold lake was situated was small and narrow. One could see everything in it at a mere glance. Suzimo did not discover anything. If he had guessed correctly, there was a high possibility that they would be at the bottom of the lake. Suzimo took a deep breath and plunged into the cold lake. The cold lake was extremely cold. Oddly, there were no signs of freezing. Suzimo dived deeper and deeper, withstanding the intensifying pressure as he dived. The lake's waters were also getting colder and colder. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Suzimo's ability to hold his breath was very strong. He could hold it for 15 minutes long. However, as Suzimo dived deeper, the coldness in his body intensified. His limbs gradually turned cold and his blood circulation slowed down. This cold lake seemed bottomless. Suzimo realized that he would freeze to death before he could see the bottom of it if he were to continue to swim. At this moment, a beam of red light suddenly streaked across the depths of the corner of the cold lake suddenly. Suzimo focused his gaze towards the light, but he could not see it clearly as the lake's waters were blocking his view. He could only vaguely see a rock with 4 words engraved present in the deeper waters. The words were very blurry. Suzimo slid both his arms and dived downwards again. After covering some distance, he had already reached the limit of his physique. Suzimo opened his eyes wide and looked at that piece of huge rock. Fire. Suzimo distinctively saw a fire, one of the 4 words on the rock. The other 3 words still looked blurry. Coldness entered his body and Suzimo shivered all over. If this continues, I'm afraid I'm going to die. Suzimo dared not continue. He moved all his 4 limbs and swam towards the surface of the water. Soon after, Suzimo climbed out of the cold lake. There was a layer of frost on his hair and brows. His lips were purplish and his face was ghastly pale. Swoosh! Suzimo panted heavily, white clouds of vapor rising from the top of his head. Wow! Not far away, the spirit monkey chattered while staring at him. He was gesturing to Suzimo anxiously, seemingly asking how Suzimo was doing. I am fine. Suzimo smiled. After resting for a while, he stood up and left the cold lake. After this round of torture, Suzimo had gained something from the misfortune. He had not only achieved initial success for the tendon's transformation section, but also sealed a massive energy source in his body. This meant that, henceforth, Suzimo could cultivate at any point in time to refine and absorb the essence sealed in his body without the need to consume any food or drinks. Suzimo's mood improved tremendously. He patted the shoulders of the spirit monkey and said smilingly, "Damn monkey, thanks." Che! The spirit monkey glanced at the sky and snorted, "Herp." He did reciprocate Suzimo's gratitude. Suzimo could not stifle his laughter. This monkey was very proud. Suzimo understood its temperament a little. Suzimo stood aside. He stood with his legs apart, parallel to his shoulders, in preparation to cultivate the 3 styles of tendon's transformation: Sanguine Ape Tri-Style, Sanguine Ape Fist Seal, Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering, and Sanguine Ape Transformation. The first 2 styles were killing moves, while the 3rd style was the core move. Dayu once told Suzimo that one could not casually execute the Sanguine Ape Transformation unless he was on the brink of death. When he was surrounded by the packs of wolves in the valley, Suzimo did not release the Sanguine Ape Transformation because he had not attained initial success of tendon's transformation. If he were to do so, his large tendons would split, his body would explode, and he would die on the spot. Anaconda's tendons were flexible and resilient, whereas Ape's tendons were both strong and soft. The outcome of cultivating Ape first would cause the large tendons to burst and split, for they could not withstand the vigorous forces of the constant tugs and vibration. One would become paralyzed. This was the reason for the need to cultivate the Anaconda prior to the Ape styles. Suzimo rested for a while. His body straightened. With his left fist guarding his chest, his right fist drew an arc in midair and smashed downwards. Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. Right on the heels of that, Suzimo retracted his fists, bent his knees, and shrunk his body like an agile monkey. Seemingly kneeling with one knee, he put his palms together as if he was holding a fruit and lifted them upwards. Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering. Be it name or posture, these 2 styles did not seem like killing moves. Suzimo was baffled. He could not figure it out and had a hunch that he seemed to be missing something. Gaga gaga. At this very moment, a fearless and bold laughter rang in his ears. Suzimo looked back. He saw that spirit monkey sitting on the ground, laughing out loud and pointing at Suzimo. His eyes were filled with contempt. He was only short of writing the word "fool" and similar words on his face. I have been looked down upon by this damn monkey again. Suzimo glared at him and said, "What is wrong with you again?" The spirit monkey stopped mocking. Leaping up, he suddenly dashed towards Suzimo like an arrow. Both his hands were guarding the chest, his right hand cupped into a fist, drawing an arc in midair, charging and aiming at Suzimo's head. MMM? Suzimo's expression changed greatly. The spirit monkey's punch was completely the style of Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. It was exactly the same and even more vicious, filled with a murderous and imposing aura. Suzimo did not understand the meaning of the word seal in Sanguine Ape Fist Seal previously. He had a moment of realization at the sight of the spirit monkey smashing down his fist. The spirit monkey clenched his fist. Its greenish-black large tendons protruded, its flesh and blood expanding. The fist that swelled up like a huge seal suddenly dropped. There was an explosive sound in the air with this punch. So, that was the case. After easing the tendons, one could make use of the strength of the tendons to tighten the flesh and skin. When the tendons and flesh were knitted together, one would use the fist as a seal. This was the essence of the Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. How much force could a human create by smashing his fist? However, if a huge seal were to smash directly in the face, what would be the outcome? Both Suzimo and the spirit monkey used the same style, but at two completely different levels, there was a world of a difference in impact. Chapter 18, 1 Year On. Chapter 18, 1 Year On. The spirit monkey suddenly executed such a ferocious Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. Suzimo was taken aback. Suzimo was suddenly enlightened on the gist of this style. Slightly distracted, he was hit right in the face by the spirit monkey's punch. The blow was severe. Suzimo was caught off guard. He was flung out and he bumped onto the stone walls in the cave, causing a huge dent on it. Dense cracks started to appear around the stone wall. Suzimo was dazed by the hit. At one moment, this monkey was laughing in such a carefree manner. In the next moment, he turned hostile and attacked. It was completely illogical. In fact, although the spirit monkey was intelligent and psychic, it did not understand the way humans interacted with one another. Hence, it was not influenced by the fighting and scheming as well as deceiving and blackmailing means in the mortal world. In the forest, the only communication between the demon clan was combat. The spirit monkey was simple and innocent. It retained the most primitive instinct of survival. It would fight or smile when it felt like it. He saved Suzimo only because of its enmity with the wolves. He completely did not care whether Suzimo was human or demon. When it released its punch, the spirit monkey had not even thought of retracting it. If Suzimo had not cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and consumed the scarlet flame fruit, attained initial success with body tempering and tendons transformation, this Sanguine Ape Fist Seal style would most probably make him half dead. Suzimo touched the blood flowing out of his nostrils. His face darkened as he said, "Damn monkey, do you wish to fight?" Wow. The spirit monkey was full of disdain. He curled his fingers at Suzimo and provoked the latter, chattering continuously. Without a word, Suzimo got up and released the plow heaven stride. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before the spirit monkey, turned his palm in the posture of rupturing the ground and landed it. What? The spirit monkey shivered all over, seemingly shocked by the prowess of the plow heaven stride combined with the ground-rupturing palm. The spirit monkey seemed to have sensed the powers of the ground-rupturing palm. Hence, it did not continue with the fight. It tiptoed and retreated with lightning speed and agility. It was an empty hit, but Suzimo did not take it to heart. He followed on closely. After 6 months of life and death experiences, Suzimo had not only cultivated spirit perception but also mastered close combat ability and various kinds of fighting techniques. Suzimo followed on closely, clenching both fists below his belly. Knuckles protruded, and it was as if a pair of horns was piercing towards the chest of the spirit monkey. At the sight of this, the spirit monkey did not retreat. It attacked instead. Its body curled, one knee seemingly. At the same time that he dodged the bovine's moon-gazing, both of its palms seemed to be holding onto a fruit and lifting it up. Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering. When the spirit monkey executed this style, Suzimo could not sense the slightest bit of murderous intent. The posture of Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering looked like someone kneeling on one knee and paying respects obediently. However, for some unknown reason, Suzimo suddenly felt his scalp blistering and also goosebumps breaking out all over his body. The spirit perception that he cultivated told him that a huge killing move was concealed in this style. Suzimo closed his eyes and retreated rapidly. At the same time, he paid attention to the spirit monkey's next moves. Pang, pang, pang. The initial curl of the spirit monkey's body suddenly bounced open upon reaching right before Su Zimo. The large tendons in its body were pulsating. Sounds of the bowstring ran. It was suddenly releasing and gushing with murderous intent. Thoughts flashed across Su Zimo's mind. He had faintly grasped the crux of the sanguine ape fruit offering. On one hand, when his large tendons contracted and suddenly stretched, it would release greater powers. On the other hand, sanguine ape fist seal first displayed weakness and restrained the murderous intent, followed by a counterattack. Apes loved peach and fruits most, but it offered the fruit at this point in time. Something was amiss. When it offered the fruit, it was evident that the ape already had a murderous intent. Bang, bang, bang. Su Zimo and the spirit monkey sparred constantly in the cave, feet curling and colliding, palms moving like saber. With Su Zimo's combat techniques, he could receive and release blows freely. He was forceful and resilient, swift and flexible. He carried an aura that could block the heaven and split the earth. Shortly after, he subdued the spirit monkey. However, it was not easy for Su Zimo to defeat the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey realized that it was difficult to gain the upper hand in the combat. Hence, it began to move in all directions and flee from Su Zimo with swift styles and agile steps. Of course, from the beginning till the end, Su Zimo did not use all of his strength. Hence, although the spirit monkey would occasionally scream loudly, gnashing his teeth, it could still get up and fight again when he was overturned by Su Zimo's hit. The spirit monkey was a good sparring partner. Su Zimo not only wanted to practice his martial skills, but also comprehend the gist of the sanguine ape tri-style as much as possible. A human and a monkey did not interact much, but they had an indescribable, tacit understanding with each other. In the time to come, Su Zimo lived in this cave. A man and a monkey occasionally went out to look for trouble with the wolf clan. After killing many wolves, they fled before the wolves could round them up. Of course, Su Zimo refused to smear himself with the spirit monkey's poop anymore. He found a type of herb that could conceal his smell and avoided the wolves. Outside the cave, Su Zimo and the spirit monkey joined forces to kill wolves. After returning to the cave, after just a few interactions, a human and a monkey would indulge in a sparring match. Later on, when the spirit monkey realized that he could not gain the upper hand, it felt indignant and started to do sneak attacks. Sometimes, when Su Zimo was resting, eating, or sleeping, the spirit monkey would sneak up to punch him before turning and escaping, then make funny faces at Su Zimo from afar, laughing arrogantly and loudly as if it was the victor. After some time, as Su Zimo's spirit perception became increasingly acute, the spirit monkey found it hard to succeed in his sneak attacks. In the blink of an eye, another 5 months passed. The 1 year of test in Songlang mountain range was almost coming to an end. During this period, Su Zimo had been refining the energy of the scarlet flame fruit and devouring blood and flesh at the same time. The body tempering and tendons transformation realms advanced continuously towards phenomenal success. Su Zimo's body was coordinated. It could be hard or soft, and his strides were as light as a raccoon. When he walked, there was no sound in the air and no traces in the snow. He leaped and shuttled in the dense forest like apes. Using the old tree branches as his support, his feet did not even need to touch the ground. Of course, to Su Zimo, his close combat ability had improved the most. In Songlang mountain range, there were not many spirit beasts that were Su Zimo's match now. A man and a monkey seemed to have become the lord of the place. Many spirit beasts would choose to retreat at the sight of them. Su Zimo had a hunch that the cold lake in the cave was not ordinary. During this period, he dived into the cold lake countless times, wanting to explore it. However, before Su Zimo could travel to the lakebed, bone-chilling coldness would penetrate his body and slow down his blood circulation, showing signs of freezing. He would return without any success each time. Today, Su Zimo planned to check out the cold lake one last time before he left the Songlang mountain range. Not long after, Su Zimo rose to the surface of the water. He could not hide the disappointment in his eyes and shook his head. He still did not succeed. Body tempering and tendons transformation sections train the flesh, blood, and large tendons. In the deeper waters, the three body parts could endure the invasion of the cold, but when the coldness penetrated the bones and seeped through the blood veins, Su Zimo could not endure it longer. In the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, the two sections after tendons transformation were bones strengthening and marrow cleansing. It seems that I have the capability to get close to the bottom of the lake only after cultivating the marrow cleansing section. I can come again and explore at that time. Su Zimo said secretly. He did not know where the spirit monkey went. Perhaps it went out to look for the wolf clan's trouble. Su Zimo was not worried. The spirit monkey was extremely alert and intelligent. Although there were many spirit beasts in Songlang Mountain Range, it was difficult for them to hurt it. Furthermore, during this period, the spirit monkey's ability had improved much after sparring and fighting with Su Zimo. Su Zimo was most curious of something. The spirit monkey seemed to have learned the tendons transformation section before. The spirit monkey not only knew the sanguine ape tri-style, his usual breathing and expiration was also similar to that in the tendons transformation section. Yet, it was a little different. It seemed a little strange. When Su Zimo questioned the spirit monkey, it seemed to be a taboo. It always averted his question. Later on, Su Zimo no longer questioned him. Today, Su Zimo did not leave the cave. He intended to bid farewell to the spirit monkey upon its return, and then return to Pingyang Town. 1 year had passed. Su Zimo missed the Su family very much, especially his older brother and younger sister. Of course, Su Zimo also looked forward to meeting Dayu again. In the blink of an eye, the sun gradually descended and it was almost evening. The spirit monkey had not returned. Su Zimo furrowed his brows. There was a flash of worry in his eyes. Songlang Mountain Range was very eerie at night. Scary spirit demons would often appear, looking for prey. Although Su Zimo and the spirit monkey were very powerful, they were not a match for spirit demons. Hence, before the night arrived, they would return to the mountain cave. The situation of the spirit monkey not returning for the entire day had never happened before. Su Zimo felt very uneasy. He suddenly stood up and drew out the thunderbolt saber that was pierced in the stone wall. He tied it to his back and stepped out of the cave. Chapter 19. You are the one courting death. Chapter 19. You are the one courting death. The sky gradually darkened. It was almost evening. It was extremely dangerous to tread in Songlang Mountain Range at this hour. Even Su Zimo could not guarantee his own safety. If he were to encounter spirit demons, the odds would not be in his favor. However, Su Zimo still decided to look for the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey had not only saved his life, but also was deeply bonded to him. After 6 months of interaction and numerous sparrings, a man and a monkey had gradually forged a close relationship. Getting along with the spirit monkey was much easier than getting along with humans. Mutual sincerity was the only requirement. Although the spirit monkey loved to fight and poke fun at Su Zimo, it would not lie to or make use of him. There was neither mutual deceit and distrust nor plotting against each other. It was easy to identify the spirit monkey through its awful body odor. After getting a few whiffs outside the cave, Su Zimo decided to dash towards a certain direction. It was only later on did Su Zimo realize that this monkey had a special preference for its own poop. Hence, the fact that it was willing to smear its poop on Su Zimo meant that it had treated him as one of its own. Along the way, Su Zimo encountered many spirit beasts. However, Su Zimo did not engage in any fights with them. Instead, he detoured and continued to search for the spirit monkey via the latter's body odor. Most of these spirit beasts recognized Su Zimo. Hence, they would not court trouble by looking for him on their own accord. Not long after, Su Zimo halted his steps. Both his ears wriggled and captured the faint sounds of weapons clashing against one another. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. Why would there be sounds of weapons clashing in Songlang Mountain Range? Even Khanate experts dared not venture deep into Songlang Mountain Range, especially when night was nearing. Cultivator. This word flashed across Su Zimo's mind. His expression was as capricious as the weather. If it were 1 year ago, like an aggressive and ignorant rookie, Su Zimo would be very eager and thrilled to fight them on. However, having gone through a year of solid training, Su Zimo was not as immature and impetuous as before. Most importantly, cultivators who dared to remain at Songlang Mountain Range in the evening were definitely at advanced realms. They could not possibly be level 1 or 2 Qi refinement warriors. Most of the spirit beasts in Songlang Mountain Range were not threats to the spirit monkey. However, the situation would be different if the spirit monkey were to encounter a cultivator. At the thought of this, Su Zimo crawled on the ground with both his hands and legs. He was twisting and turning like an anaconda slithering across the forest without a single sound. Anaconda Swath. The first style of Tenden's transformation was to approach the opponent without a sound. The sound of weapons clashing ahead were becoming increasingly clearer and intensive. In between the clashes, he could even hear the sounds of some men taunting and a woman snarling. Under the dark and misty sky, Su Zimo lay in the grass and observed the battle that was occurring about 10 feet from him. The trees and plants surrounding the battle had already been cut by the weapons. A relatively wide and spacious open space could be seen. 5 men dressed in Taoist robes were surrounding and attacking a lady in yellow robe. Each of the 5 men was controlling a flying sword and brandishing both hands. It was as if an invisible force was connecting the flying sword to the individual. The yellow-robed lady was also controlling a flying sword. There was a layer of frost on the sword. Apparently, this sword was more superior than those in the hands of the 5 men. The flying sword seemed very light and agile under the control of the yellow-robed lady. The yellow-robed lady seemed to have some treasure with her. When she was occasionally pierced by the other party's flying sword, a glowing shield would light up around her body. However, the shine of the shield got dimmer and dimmer as time passed. The yellow-robed lady was fighting against 5 people. Her strides looked clumsy. It seemed that she could not hold up any longer. She was obviously disadvantaged now. At the sight of the fighting and killing between the cultivators, Su Zimo felt that he had widened his horizons. Su Zimo retracted his gaze and looked at the other side. Beside the battlefield, 2 men were watching the fight. Their attires were completely the same as those 5 men on the battlefield. Obviously, they belonged to the same group. There was a spirit monkey standing in between the 2 men. It was covered with injuries but looked arrogant and indignant, its eyes shining with a murderous aura. Su Zimo focused his gaze. Both the fore and hind limbs of the spirit monkey had been cuffed tightly by 2 iron hoops. The sharp spikes inside the rim of the hoops had already pierced into its flesh. The spirit monkey had completely lost its freedom. It was hard for it to move an inch. Su Zimo had never fought with the cultivators and did not know their tactics. He was further unaware of the realms that these few cultivators were at. However, a murderous intent rose in Su Zimo's heart at the thought that the spirit monkey was in trouble. His gaze was cold and sinister. Su Zimo pondered for a moment. He did not strike immediately. Instead, he lowered his body and hid himself more. This was because he knew that once he strikes, he must kill his enemies at once. He could not give the opponent any time to react. This was not a one-to-one combat. He faced a total of 7 cultivators. A Qi refinement warrior with a gaunt and thin face smiled and said lustfully, "Young lady, your augmentation talisman won't be able to hold out long. I advise you to surrender. Otherwise, you will suffer." That's right. Swords and daggers don't have eyes. If they cut your little face accidentally, it will be such a pity. Haha, you have been poisoned with our Pisces aqua powder. You can't hang on for too long, even if you are a Foundation establishment cultivator. The yellow-robed lady arched her brows in anger, her expression chilly and aloof. She said coldly, "The few of you are courting death. You're just Qi refinement warriors. I'm a cultivator from Azure Frost Sect. If you know what is good for you, quickly surrender. Su Zimo was stunned. He did not expect the yellow-robed lady to be a Foundation establishment cultivator. The frightening thing was that she was seemingly poisoned by the Pisces aqua powder. Hence, she would not be a match for these 5 Chi refinement warriors. As to the augmentation talisman mentioned by that Chi refinement warrior, Su Zimo had heard about it. One of the Chi refinement warriors, who had a large face, sneered. Hey, since we know that you are a cultivator of Azure Frost sect, the more we can't let you off. You have fallen into the joyful Seven's hands. We'll make you feel so ecstatic that you will crave for death. Be obedient. Seemingly distracted by these words, the flying sword controlled by the yellow-robed lady halted for a moment. As a result, she was pierced by 2 other flying swords. Clang, clang. A shield with a golden glow appeared around the yellow-robed lady and blocked the 2 flying swords. However, upon the impact of the blow, the shield was filled with cracks and looked like it would break at any point in time. The yellow-robed lady pursed her red lips without saying a word. She defended with all her might and refused to concede defeat. On the other hand, the bald-headed Chi refinement warrior beside the spirit monkey looked relaxed. He said smilingly, "We have gained a lot in this trip to Canglang mountain range. This lady definitely has a lot of treasures with her. Most importantly, be it face or figure, this lady is of supreme grade. She will be a delight for the 7 of us. Haha. That said, if we don't have the beast trapping hoop that Master passed down to us, we really won't be able to take down this monkey," said another Chi refinement warrior who was carrying a long rod. There was a lingering fear in his heart. The bald-headed Chi refinement warrior sneered and said, "After we return, let's torture this monkey and force it to pledge a blood oath. I don't believe that we can't subdue a beast." When the 2 saw that the outcome was quite certain, they could not help relaxing a little and chatting casually. At this moment, there was a bloody shine in the spirit monkey's eyes. Initially rooted to the ground, it suddenly turned its body and opened its mouth wide, revealing its sharp teeth as it bit the neck of the Chi refinement warrior beside him. The spirit monkey's limbs could not move as they had been bound. However, biting was an innate skill of it since the day it was born. If it could successfully bite the Chi refinement warrior, the latter would not have any chance of surviving. The spirit monkey was tall and big. It had to lower its head to bite the Chi refinement warrior who was relatively shorter. In addition, its body was restrained. As such, its action was slightly delayed and that person reacted in time. The countenance of the Chi refinement warrior holding the rod changed. He quickly dodged. Pierce. Although he had avoided being bitten on the vital point of his neck, a big piece of flesh on his shoulder tip had been torn off by the spirit monkey. Fresh blood was spilling out from it. Ah! The Chi refinement warrior cried in pain, looking ghastly pale. He touched the small cloth bag below his waist, and a porcelain bottle appeared in his palm. He opened the bottle and took out a tuft of powder-like substance before applying it on his wound. This stopped the fresh blood from dripping. It was very amazing. After the Chi refinement warrior managed his wound, he lifted his steel rod furiously. There was a flash of light, and the rod landed hard on the knees of the spirit monkey. He scolded, "Bastard, kneel down." There was a loud thud on the ground. The spirit monkey trembled. Flashes of pain could be seen in its eyes. However, this hit by the rod did not make the spirit monkey kneel down. On the contrary, it provoked its murderous instinct. The spirit monkey chewed the piece of torn flesh rampantly, revealing a ferocious and menacing glare. It then swallowed it in one gulp. Thereafter, it turned to face the Chi refinement warrior and laughed gaga, loudly with a mocking look in its eyes. He was untamed, obstinate and unyielding. "Bastard, you're courting death." At the sight of the spirit monkey's behavior, the Chi refinement warrior's fury intensified. He did not care whether his wound would burst open. He lifted the steel rod again and smashed it towards the top of the spirit monkey's head. At this very moment, a cold voice rang in his ears. "You're the one courting death." Chapter 20, Kill. Chapter 20, Kill. When this sound was heard, it was accompanied by a strong aura of death that almost suffocated him. "Who is this? You actually sneaked up behind me quietly and I didn't notice it?" Before he could finish his thought, his head hurt and he lost consciousness immediately. Initially, the Chi refinement warrior who was standing at the other side looked relaxed when he saw his comrade teach the spirit monkey a lesson agitatedly. He did not expect to see such a terrifying and eerie scene. A distance away, the bush had moved a little, but the bald-headed Chi refinement warrior did not take it to heart. However, a figure mysteriously appeared behind his comrade in the next moment. Enshrouded by the misty and dark skies, the intruder exuded a towering murderous aura, as if he was a ghost from hell. It happened too quickly and suddenly. The intruder slammed his palm on the head of the Chi refinement warrior holding the rod. The latter was caught off guard and could not defend himself at all. Poof, poof, poof. The head of the Chi refinement warrior holding the rod was actually pressed directly into his chest. Blood-chilling sounds of flesh and blood bursting could be heard coming from the neck. The bald-headed Chi refinement warrior looked aghast. Just as he was about to shout out loudly, he saw the intruder taking successive moves. The figure stretched his legs had reached him in just 2 strides. The murderous aura was pervasive. This overbearing aura forced the bald-headed Chi refinement warrior to swallow the words in his mouth back into his throat again. The bald-headed Chi refinement warrior instinctively stretched out his hands towards the cloth bag on his waist. He calmed down slightly only when a flying sword landed in his hands. However, before the Chi refinement warrior could draw out his flying sword, the intruder's palm had already landed on him. Pa! The skull of the bald-headed Chi refinement warrior was smashed in just 1 hit. His brain split and he died on the spot. In actual fact, when the spirit monkey tried to bite the Chi refinement warrior holding the rod, Su Zimo had already began taking action. However, as both parties were about 10 feet away from each other, Su Zimo dared not increase his speed, for fear of being discovered. When Su Zimo reached these 2 Chi refinement warriors' sides, they were destined to meet with a fatal calamity. The entire process seemed very slow upon narration, but in fact, it occurred in the split of a moment. To top-notch martial experts, this moment was especially crucial. Ow! Ow! The spirit monkey recognized Su Zimo. His eyes lit up and he was overjoyed. He shouted loudly to express the excitement in his heart. Su Zimo ignored the spirit monkey. Without a word and carrying a calm demeanor, he had slayed the bald-headed Chi refinement warrior. Twisting and moving, he charged straight to the other battlefield. Long before he attacked, Su Zimo had already made the preparations. Once he attacked, he had to give it his best shot and crumble the other party in lightning speed. Putting aside the obvious point that these 7 Chi refinement warriors were ill-intentioned, the painful torture that they administered to the spirit monkey alone had already provoked Su Zimo's murderous instinct. Most importantly, if he were to let off any one of them, they would become a source of endless trouble. Su Zimo heard very clearly that these 7 individuals were from the Joyful clan. Who knew what strong and powerful cultivators were in this clan? Would they hunt him down? On the other battlefield, 5 Chi refinement warriors from the Joyful clan jumped in shock at the sudden change in circumstances. Who would have thought that 2 of their clan mates would die grievously in a matter of moments? The most perplexing thing was that the intruder was clad in skins of beast and full of black stubble on his face. He looked like an uncivilized, primitive wild man. They also could not sense any flow of spirit chi from his body. He was not a cultivator. Such a barbarian could actually kill 2 level 6 Chi refinement warriors in the blink of an eye. The 5 of them already did not have the time to think, because this barbarian had already dashed to them with a pervasive murderous intent and monstrous aura. There was a flash of cruelty in the eyes of the fat-faced Chi refinement warrior who was facing Su Zimo. He smiled grimly. Where did this barbarian come from? You have no sense of danger. Gee. This fellow snarled and directed his flying sword to the oncoming Su Zimo. A beam of light shone from the flying sword. The sword's aura intensified. It was so extraordinary. Su Zimo closed his eyes briefly. Facing this flying sword, he had initially planned to use the bovine-tongued saber to shatter or hurl away the sword. However, Su Zimo's acute spirit perception told him that this sword was very powerful and might possibly injure him. Su Zimo charged forward in lightning speed. However, the flying sword was lunging at him at an even faster speed. If it was 1 year ago, Su Zimo would not be able to react in time, let alone dodge this flying sword. However, today, Su Zimo suddenly lowered his body. All of his 4 limbs exerted strength as he twisted his body, staying close to the ground. Agile and swift, he had a close shave with the flying sword. In a matter of moments, he appeared in front of the fat-faced Chi Refinement Warrior. The Chi Refinement Warrior was stunned. The colors on his face drained. Su Zimo suddenly got up. His body and 4 limbs became as soft and flexible as an anaconda. It coiled onto the plump body of this man. Large tendons pulsated, flesh and blood expanded, and the entire body exploded with energy. After Anaconda Swath, he executed another killing move of Tendon's transformation, Anaconda Strangle. All the spirit beasts in the Songlang mountain range were aware. After being bitten by the anaconda, one might still escape. However, if one's body were to be coiled by the anaconda, they would die for sure. Even if one's body was strong enough to wrestle with the anaconda, he would eventually die of suffocation. In the past 6 months, although the spirit monkey often sparred with Su Zimo, it had never dared to allow Su Zimo to close up on and coil it. This Chi Refinement Warrior did not have a body that was as strong and resilient as the spirit monkey. After Su Zimo wrapped and strangled it, all the bones in his body were crushed. Deafening sounds of pa, pa, could be heard. It was horrible and gruesome. Poof! Bloody fog filled the air. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, a burly figure burst open on the spot and turned into a puddle of fleshy mud. This was the true powers of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. After killing this man, Su Zimo did not stop. He used Plow Heaven Stride and headed towards another Chi Refinement Warrior with a gaunt and frail face. Although Su Zimo was unaware of the cultivation realm of the 5 Chi Refinement Warriors present, using his spirit perception, he could vaguely sense that the fat-faced Chi Refinement Warrior who died earlier and the one before him right now were the greatest threats to him. He could reduce the chances of an accident to the lowest if he could kill the 2 of them first. At the sight of Su Zimo killing 3 people, the skinny Chi Refinement Warrior wore a grave expression. He instantly became cautious. A ray of light burst out from his fingertip and entered the flying sword. The flying sword flickered and shone brightly. Go! This flying sword dashed towards Su Zimo, its movements as swift as thunder and as fast as lightning. One of the 3 Chi Refinement Warriors who were attacking the yellow-robed lady also came forward and directed his flying sword to pierce the middle of Su Zimo's back. The 2 Chi Refinement Warriors concentrated on rounding up and attacking Su Zimo. Su Zimo seemed to have eyes grown on his back. Without even turning back, as he was charging forward, he dodged and got away from the flying sword piercing towards his back. Simultaneously, Su Zimo used his backhand to grip the thunderbolt saber on his back, spread his arms and slashed towards the flying sword coming towards him. Clang! Ear-piercing sounds of weapons clashing could be heard. The thunderbolt saber chipped off after colliding with the flying sword. Cracks appeared around the chip. Obviously, the saber was ruined and could no longer be used. Su Zimo was stunned. Since he got hold of the thunderbolt saber, it had always been of use to him. It could even slash the skin, hair, flesh, and blood of spirit beasts. Unexpectedly, it almost shattered into pieces after colliding with the agile, long, and slim flying sword of the cultivator. Su Zimo's expression did not change. He was not bothered. This was because he had already achieved his objective. The thunderbolt saber had hit the flying sword. Riding on the shocking energy that exploded from his body, it had already sent the flying sword on a deviated route that was some distance away. The flying sword that should initially pierce into Su Zimo's skull only passed through the passage beside his cheek. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo had never paused his attacks for a single moment. His speed only increased. He was closing in. Su Zimo used the Thunderbolt Saber to block the flying sword so that he could shorten the distance between he and the thin and frail Qi Refinement Warrior. Su Zimo remembered Dai Yu's words by heart. Most of the cultivators' bodies are relatively weak. As long as you can avert their first wave of attack and take the chance to shorten the distance between both of you, you will be able to make use of the strong and powerful close combat ability of the Demon Clan to slay them. Chapter 21. Calamity. Chapter 21. Calamity. Su Zimo widened his strides and walked to the front of the skinny Qi Refinement Warrior. As soon as he flipped his hand, the ground-rupturing palm was violently executed towards the face of the other party. The skinny Qi Refinement Warrior was very alert and quick to react. At the sight of Su Zimo dodging the flying sword, he had searched out a face mirror from the cloth bag on his waist and chanted something. The mirror enlarged instantly, glistening and crystal clear. Su Zimo had long noticed the small cloth bag hanging on the waist of the cultivators. It seemed to be a cosmic bag. Whenever they touched it, they could retrieve something. However, Su Zimo did not find it unusual. Compared to the methods that Dai Yu used to open up a big and spacious cultivation field, these small cloth bags were obviously much weaker. In a hurry, the skinny Qi Refinement Warrior lifted the mirror in his hands to shield his head. Bang! Crack! 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 Su Zimo's hands landed on the mirror of the skinny Qi Refinement Warrior. First, there was a deafening sound of an explosion. Immediately after, lines of cracks appeared on the mirror surface. Ah! The skinny Qi Refinement Warrior gave out a miserable cry. His arms had been instantly crushed by the powers reflected by the surface of the mirror. His veins and bones shattered and his body was flung off. This time, Su Zimo dared to hit with his bare fists. On the one hand, it was because he sensed that the mirror did not have any attack properties. On the other hand, the surface of the mirror did not shine when the other party took it out. As expected, this mirror had been destroyed in one hit by Su Zimo. The skinny Qi Refinement Warrior almost died on the spot. He fell to the ground, looking as white as a sheet and shrieking, "Who are you? How dare you intervene in the matters of my Joy Clan? I'll kill your people." Su Zimo sneered. He moved forward with large strides, wanting to end the life of this skinny Qi Refinement Warrior. At this very moment, Su Zimo sighted a flash of strange looks beneath the eyes of the skinny Qi Refinement Warrior. Not good. Su Zimo was stunned. He quickly moved backwards. This was the first time that Su Zimo was involved in a fight with a cultivator. He had to be extremely cautious, for fear that the other party might catch him off guard with some methods that he was unaware of. Splash! The skinny Qi Refinement Warrior suddenly raised his hand and dispersed a powder that emitted a faint fragrance. Nevertheless, Su Zimo was a step quicker in moving backwards and did not come into contact with this mist of powder. "Comrade, this is the joyful reunion powder. You must not breathe this in." The sound of the yellow-robed lady could be heard. It was gentle and beautiful, carrying a tinge of anxiety. Su Zimo frowned and looked at the skinny Qi Refinement Warrior who was hiding in the mist of powder. He paused for a moment. If he were to wait for a while, these powder would naturally disperse and not pose a threat. However, Su Zimo could not waste time because there were 3 more cultivators nearby. Su Zimo decisively turned and gave up on that fellow temporarily. He then charged towards the person behind him. At the sight of the skinny Qi Refinement Warrior being reduced to a handicapped by one hit of the palm, the man behind Su Zimo had long turned pale with fright. He quickly controlled the flying sword to charge at Su Zimo's glabella with all his might. There was no flicker or shine of light in this flying sword. Su Zimo closed his eyes and did not intend to dodge it. Maintaining the posture of downward thrust, he stuck out his right hand and gently lay it on the oncoming flying sword. Rap, hit, pull, swash. Although this flying sword did not break, it had been thrown aside by Su Zimo. It landed in the mud, slanted. This Qi Refinement Warrior was stunned. Although he was only controlling a low-end item spirit, he had never seen anyone receiving a spirit weapon with bare hands and not suffering any injury. What kind of monster was this? After a moment of dawdle, Su Zimo appeared by the side of this man. His body curled, one knee seemingly kneeling, his palms put together and lifted up. Sanguine ape fruit offering. Bang! This lift-up happened to support the chin of this chi refinement warrior. Sounds of breaking could be heard coming from the neck bones and chin of this man. His head fell backwards and hung on his back. His eyes were wide open, filled with horror. He was already dead. There were two more chi refinement warriors attacking the yellow-robed lady. At the sight of this, they were instantly scared out of their wits. Su Zimo spread his body and charged towards one of them. Left hand guarding his chest, right hand clenched into a fist, large tendons pulsating, blood and flesh expanding. His fists turned into seal and landed from the sky with a deafening thud. A large shadow engulfed, covering the sky and the sun. This chi refinement warrior was stunned so badly by Su Zimo's aura that both his lungs and guts were splitting. How would he dare to try to attack or defend? He hurriedly turned and tried to flee. Believing that he was going to escape from the scope of the large seal above him, he was elated. At this very moment, he could hear the sounds of bow strings vibrating. It was petrifying. Pang, pang, pang. Su Zimo's large tendons stretched and his arms swelled and enlarged. The gigantic seal came crashing down, caught up with that chi refinement warrior who was fleeing in panic and landed on the top of his head. Poof! After his skull exploded, there was still some leftover energy in the gigantic seal. It immediately crushed and shattered this man's body. At the sight of 5 of his clanmates dying and one being severely injured, the remaining chi refinement warrior lost his cool. While he was distracted, the yellow-robed lady controlled the flying sword and circled his neck once. A large head was hurled off and fresh blood splattered. The headless corpse fell to the ground and twitched from time to time without any consciousness. The yellow-robed lady was covered in delicate beads of sweat. After killing this man, her chest was heaving and she was panting slightly, seemingly to have reached the limit of her physique. Su Zimo turned and looked at the skinny chi refinement warrior who lost his arm. However, he discovered that the other party had seized the opportunity to escape to a distance. His right hand was pressing onto his wound. With a flying sword under his feet, he traveled through the sky and disappeared into the forest immediately. Su Zimo frowned. At this moment, it was too late for him to chase him. Or rather, even if he could catch up with him, Su Zimo could not do anything to him as he was high in the air. Suddenly, Su Zimo discovered that he had a fatal weakness. He could not fly in the sky. If the Chi Refinement Warrior were to execute the sword kinesis flight immediately before fighting him, he could only be attacked and could not strike back. After this round of killings, night had gradually fallen. One could vaguely hear the roaring sounds of the spirit beasts shaking the heavens and earth. Looking at the back view of the skinny Chi Refinement Warrior in the darkness, there was a flash of worry in Su Zimo's eyes. This man's escape was ultimately a calamity. No one knew when this calamity would begin to erupt. However, another thought flashed across Su Zimo's mind. Night had fallen, and it was the time where spirit beasts and spirit demons come out preying. This man's broken arm would emit a strong stench of blood. He might not leave the Songlang mountain range alive. Ow! Ow! The spirit monkey's shouts interrupted Su Zimo's deep thoughts. The spirit monkey was tied up. He leaped about on the ground that he was standing at, shouting at Su Zimo. It wanted him to help it remove the iron hoops around its limbs quickly. Stay there obediently first. Who told you to run around? It was a rare sight for the spirit monkey to be defeated. Su Zimo deliberately cast him aside and went to the corpses of the few cultivators. He removed the 6 small cloth bags from their bodies and tucked them into his arms without even looking. Although he did not know what they were, Su Zimo could sense that these small cloth bags were quite famous and seemed to be cosmic bags. It definitely contained many treasures. Su Zimo turned and picked up a flying sword that had fallen to the ground. The shape of this flying sword was a little unique. It did not have a handle, but only a blade that was extremely sharp. Typical people would have problems holding it. However, this was not much of an issue for Suzimo. Suzimo held onto the sharp blade with his bare hands and walked to the spirit monkey. He aimed at the iron hoops that bound the spirit monkey's limbs and slashed hard. Clang! Sparks were flying everywhere. A white streak appeared on the iron hoop, but it did not break. Suzimo furrowed his brows slightly. This flying sword could even shatter the thunderbolt saber. Yet, it could not break the iron hoops on the spirit monkey's limbs. This was a little troublesome. Suzimo could faintly sense that it was not because the flying sword was not sharp enough, but because he did not use it correctly. Chapter 22, Yao Xue. Chapter 22, Yao Xue. Just as Suzimo was deep in thought, the yellow-robed lady gradually approached him and said softly, "I'm Yao Xue from Azure Frost Sect. Thank you for saving me and fighting for justice, comrade." Suzimo's thoughts were focused on how to remove the hoops from the spirit monkey's forelimbs. He only glanced at Yao Xue but did not reply. Yao Xue pondered shortly before saying, "Comrade, you wish to remove this beast trapping hoop, right? Why don't I give it a try?" Suzimo took a hesitant glance at Yao Xue before nodding. Yao Xue tapped the flying sword in her hands gently. 2 flashes of light appeared, and a layer of frost covered the blade of the sword instantly. The aura of the sword was appalling. Suzimo looked on conscientiously. Earlier on, only 1 flash of light appeared on the flying swords of the 2 Chi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan. However, there were 2 flashes of light on the flying sword in Yao Xue's hands now. Obviously, the sword in this lady's hands was of a better quality. The blade was also sharper. Suzimo quietly memorized this and paid careful attention to Yao Xue's every move. He saw Yao Xue controlling the flying sword's movement from a distance. When her slim and fair finger pointed forward a little, the flying sword drew an arc in midair and slashed the beast trapping hoop hard. Pa! Pa! Coinciding with the noise, the beast trapping hoop broke. Having felt aggrieved for some time, the spirit monkey was thrilled after breaking free from the restraint. Oblivious to its bleeding wounds, it chattered "ow, ow," continuously. "Thank you." Suzimo nodded to Yao Xue. "It's not a big deal." Yao Xue smiled. Suddenly, a doubt arose in her heart, and she could not help asking, "Is this a spirit beast that you reared and nurtured?" Yao Xue could tell that this wild man who was clad in hide knew the spirit monkey. Most likely, he intervened in this matter because he wanted to save the spirit monkey and then saved her in the passing. In the cultivation world, many cultivators would rear and groom spirit beasts to improve their combat ability. Once the spirit beast had pledged a blood oath, they would not betray the cultivator. Otherwise, they would be punished by heaven and die from a reflux of their own blood flow. Upon hearing this question, Suzimo frowned, shook his head and said, "He is my friend?" "Ah." Yao Xue blinked her eyes. She was very puzzled. It was really hard for her to imagine how a human could become friends with a spirit beast. Since ancient times, human and demon were of different paths and in constant fights with each other. Their relationship was getting from bad to worse. There was only one possibility of interaction, a master and slave relationship whereby one party had taken a blood oath. The term friend truly seemed a little unique when it came to the 2 different clans. After all, there was an ancient saying that those of different clans would not be of the same heart and mind. Suzimo ignored Yao Xue. He approached the few corpses and picked up the 5 flying swords. Looking at the broken thunderbolt saber, Suzimo felt a little hesitant. In the end, he still picked it up and tied it behind him. Suddenly, Suzimo sensed great danger and turned behind. In the deep parts of the forest behind him, 2 dots of dimmed lights appeared in the darkness. The aura was terrifying. They were exuding a chilling, murderous intent. "Pest!" Suzimo exhaled a breath of cold air in shock. He said in a low voice, "It's a spirit demon. Quickly leave." Before Suzimo spoke, the spirit monkey had already ran off. Although it was injured and limping, it could still move swiftly and agilely in the forest. Yao Xue was obviously a little panicky and at a loss of what to do. Su Zimo did not plan to bother about her initially. However, this lady had helped to chop the beast trapping hoop earlier. If he were to leave her behind, she would most probably die here given her current state. Su Zimo took a glance at her and said in a low voice, "Follow me." Just as he spoke, Su Zimo had already begun to move forward. Yao Xue's cheeks blushed faintly. She gritted her teeth and quickly followed him. Yao Xue had been poisoned with the Pisces aqua powder. She would not be impacted much if she could force out the poison and nurse her injuries. However, she had just been engaged in a fierce battle with the Joyful Seven earlier and almost exhausted all her spiritual powers. She could not even fly by standing on her flying sword. As such, she gradually could not endure the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. She felt her entire body heating up and limbs numb. Yao Xue was very clear of the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. No matter how strong-willed one would not be able to endure the power of this drug. If I can't endure it, I will rather be devoured by this spirit demon than to be humiliated by others. Yao Xue bit her cherry-red lips and quietly decided. The spirit monkey had long disappeared after running off. That wild man in front of her appeared faintly from time to time. Yao Xue tried her best to chase up to him. The unknown spirit demon behind followed her closely. Its chilling gaze was like a thorn on her back, never disappearing for a moment. After running for a while, Yao Xue's legs were wobbly. She almost tripped and fell onto the ground. Although she was already prepared to be buried in the beast's mouth, she was terrified at the thought that she would be torn apart and devoured by the spirit demon. Sounds of the spirit demon treading on the grass behind her were getting closer and closer. The murderous intent was pervasive and cold. Yao Xue could even smell the fishy breath of spirit demon's mouth. However, at this very moment, Yao Xue did not have the energy to run anymore. Forget it. To think that I, Yao Xue, would die at this place. If father knows about this, sigh. Yao Xue was totally exhausted. She stood still, panting. She felt aggrieved and sorrowful. Closing her eyes, 2 streaks of tears flowed down quietly. At this moment, Yao Xue suddenly felt a strong and sturdy arm on her waist. Thereafter, her body felt light. Someone had taken her away from the place. "Miss, pardon me. There is a need to adapt to the change in circumstances." The man's voice rang beside her ears. Yao Xue opened her eyes wide and saw the side view of Su Zimo's face. So he didn't leave me behind. At this moment, Yao Xue had indescribable joy in her heart. She seemed to have found a place to vent all her grievances and sufferings now. Tears streamed down her face. Swoosh, swoosh. Winds howled and shadows of trees retreated. The man held 6 flying swords with his left hand and 1 person with his right hand. Yet, this did not slow him down. Instead, he moved even faster. It was only until now did Yao Xue realize that this man did not use all of his strength during the earlier stretch of journey. Otherwise, she would not have been able to catch up with him. This person is not bad. Yao Xue was drained of energy. Leaning closer to the man who carried her, the Pisces aqua powder was continuously taking effect, causing her thoughts to run wild. Yao Xue was stunned. She quickly bit the tip of her tongue and tried hard to maintain soberness. Dashing left and limping right from time to time, the man seemed to be very familiar with the Songlang mountain range. Although Yao Xue could hear the spirit beast roaring, they did not encounter any attack. After an unknown period of time, Yao Xue felt dizzy and could no longer control her body. Yao Xue was gradually losing her consciousness. At this moment, the man's voice rang again, "Miss, wake up." Ooh, ooh. Yao Xue's body was feverish and she was sleep-talking. Swoosh. Sounds of water could be heard. Ubiquitous feelings of coldness surrounded Yao Xue's burning body. Shivering, Yao Xue sobered up, her pair of eyes gradually regaining sight. This? Where is this? Shivering, Yao Xue asked and looked at the surroundings. This was a small and narrow mountain cave. She was in the middle of a cold lake, and there was nothing around it. Although the effect of the Pisces aqua powder was still present, the bone-chilling coldness from the lake waters constantly stimulated Yao Xue's nerves and allowed her to maintain sober. You are a foundation establishment cultivator. Coupled with the aid of this cold lake, you will most likely be able to defuse the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. After saying these words, the man turned and left. Before leaving, that man found a few pieces of wolf skins and covered the entrance of this small and narrow cave. Sounds of the man's steps gradually faded away. Noticing all these, feelings of strangeness rose in Yao Xue's heart. After falling into the lake, her clothes were already drenched. Nevertheless, the man did not peep at her at all. He was also very meticulous. He covered the cave's entrance as he was afraid that she would feel awkward. Although the effect of Pisces aqua powder was strong, it did not constitute as a threat to foundation establishment cultivators. Yao Xue was feeling miserable that she did not have a chance to force the effect of the Pisces aqua powder out. Now that she was sober again, she quickly searched out an elixir from her storage bag and put it into her mouth. She then began to circulate the Spirit Heart Sutra. At this very moment, she could hear the man's voice mingled with the spirit monkey's chatters outside. A man and a monkey seemed to be communicating. The man's voice was neither loud nor soft. The volume was just audible to Yao Xue. Yao Xue felt her heart warmed. That man used such a method to tell her that he would always stay outside the cave. He was neither too far from nor too close to her. Hence, she could heal her injuries without any worries. This man is really interesting. Yao Xue smiled gently. She looked so beautiful and flawless. Chapter 23. Fallen Deep into a Vortex. Chapter 23. Fallen Deep into a Vortex. Su Zimo stepped out of the cave. The spirit monkey was waiting for him outside. The spirit monkey laughed gaga, pointing to the inside of the cave. He winked and made faces at Su Zimo with a strange expression. He even wiggled his body a few times. Su Zimo cursed and laughed. This damn monkey. You know everything. In actual fact, although Su Zimo had not heard of the joyful reunion powder, he could vaguely guess the purpose and effect of this drug. He had studied for more than a decade. Su Zimo would not take advantage of another person in a perilous state, not to mention that both of them met by chance. How are your injuries? Su Zimo asked. Whoa. The spirit monkey waved its hands to express that it was fine. The spirit monkey's physique was amazing and body healing capabilities were extremely strong. It would recover in a few days' time. After being silent for a while, Su Zimo said softly, I'll be leaving. Oh. The spirit monkey widened its big eyes. They were filled with puzzlement. In the cognition of the spirit monkey, Su Zimo was similar to him. He lived in the Canglang mountain range, had no one to rely on or turn to, and had no strings attached. Su Zimo pointed to the direction of Pingyang town and said, There is a town about a few dozens of kilometers from Canglang mountain range. My home is over there. I have to go back now. The spirit monkey stopped shouting. Tears welled up in its eyes. It looked a little sad. Turning its back, it quietly licked the wounds on his body. Su Zimo felt a little complicated too. In Su Zimo's eyes, the spirit monkey was no longer the initial savior that it was. The spirit monkey was a friend whom he ate, lived, and shared weals and woes with. Su Zimo had also thought of bringing the spirit monkey with him, but this was not realistic. On one hand, Su Zimo was worried that the spirit monkey could not get used to the outside world. On the other hand, he was worried that he would not be able to protect the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey was obstinate and unyielding. It was also eccentric and untamed. He did not know what kind of huge trouble it would stir up outside. Life outside might not be safer, happier, and more carefree than life in the Canglang mountain range. Comrade, you can come in. At this moment, the gentle voice of that lady could be heard coming from inside the cave. It broke the pin-drop silence outside the cave. Su Zimo patted the spirit monkey's shoulders and stepped into the cave first. Although the night was dark, After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo's eyesight was superb. At the sight of Yao Xue, he could not help being slightly stunned. Yao Xue's beauty was astonishing. Her beauty surpassed that of Shen Mengqi and was comparable to Daiyu. It was just that she did not have the unique charisma on Daiyu. Yao Xue had just gotten out of the cold lake. Her black tresses were still wet. She looked like a beauty who had just gotten out of a bath, with a touch of gentleness. She was very attractive. Su Zimo was a little distracted, but resumed his normal self after a moment. Looking at the current Yao Xue, he guessed that the effect of the joyful reunion powder had already faded. Su Zimo nodded at Yao Xue and walked to his usual resting place. He searched out the few small cloth bags from the joyful clan and fidgeted with them curiously. "Comrade, I still don't know your name?" Yao Xue smiled and asked. "Su Zimo." Su Zimo responded without even looking up. He continued to fidget with the cloth bags in his hands. Yao Xue looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away. Recalling the embarrassing state that she had been in when poisoned by the joyful reunion powder, she could not help blushing and feeling shy. Yao Xue gently gritted her molars, her distracted eyes glancing everywhere. She tried to appear casual as she asked, "Just now, just now, Miss lost your consciousness. Nothing happened." Before Yao Xue could finish her words, Su Zimo added, "Oh." Yao Xue furrowed her brows when she discovered that Su Zimo seemed reluctant to respond to her. He had been fiddling with the storage bags in his hands. She could not help feeling a little annoyed at heart. After watching by the side for a while, Yao Xue could not help asking, "Comrade, you don't seem to be a cultivator?" Su Zimo paused. He observed Yao Xue's eyes and said calmly, "I don't have a spirit root." At the sound of these words, there was not the slightest bit of contempt in Yao Xue's eyes. On the contrary, there was a flash of shock and regret. This subtle change made Su Zimo feel a little positive about Yao Xue. Yao Xue approached Su Zimo. She sat on the ground, not minding the dirt and mess. She said jokingly, "Then I won't address you as comrade anymore. It's only right that I call you Mr. Su." "It's up to you." Su Zimo smiled. Yao Xue pointed at the cloth bags in Su Zimo's hands and said, "This thing is a storage bag. It is a very common item in the cultivation world. Almost everyone will bring one with him. It is a cosmos bag and can store a lot of items." "Oh." However, the storage bag will only open after one uses spirit qi to stimulate it. While talking, Yao Xue took a storage bag and patted it with her palm. A pile of items dropped onto the ground. Most of them were bottles and jars. There were also dozens of stones the size of a fist. These are spirit stones. This is something that a cultivator cannot do without. There are 3 grades of it: supreme grade, middle grade, and inferior grade. These few are inferior grade spirit stones. As for spirit root, it can be categorized into 5 grades: pseudo-spirit root, ordinary spirit root, superior class spirit root, earth spirit root, and the most rare heaven spirit root. Yao Xue was very smart. Seemingly, she could tell that Su Zimo was very curious about cultivators. Hence, she tirelessly told him about the common information of cultivators. Daiyu hardly talked about such things. Hence, Su Zimo could not help but be immersed in this information. One party was humble to learn, and the other party spoke without any reservation. Before they knew it, it was already dawn and one night had passed. Even if one was a cultivator, he would feel tired after having a sleepless night. Su Zimo looked apologetic. He got up and said, "Miss Yao, regarding this information on cultivators, thank you for teaching me generously. I have gained a lot." Yao Xue smiled and said, "If you wish to thank me, give me 3 pieces of wolf skins. This is also my purpose for this trip." There were hundreds of wolf skins inside this cave. Su Zimo waved his big hands and said, "Take as much as you want." Yao Xue said, "Actually, everything on the spirit beasts are treasures. To a talisman master, hides are a necessity. You have so many spirit beast hides in the cave. If you sell them, you will be able to get many spirit stones in return." Yao Xue had told Su Zimo earlier. In the cultivation world, there were 4 types of cultivators with a very special status. Their status was even higher than that of ordinary cultivators. The elixir refinement master could refine elixirs. There were numerous kinds of elixirs with a wide scope of usage. To cultivators, elixirs were indispensable. The weapon refinement master could refine various types and grades of spirit weapons. To cultivators, spirit weapons could significantly improve their ability and were also indispensable. The talisman master could create talismans. The augmentation talisman that Yao Xue used to block the attacks of Joyful 7 earlier was one of such talismans. Without the augmentation talisman, Yao Xue would have long been defeated and captured. The array formation master was proficient in the formation of arrays. Many of the major clans had major defensive array formations. If the cultivators were to fall into any of the arrays set up by opponents, they would be restrained everywhere, and their lives might even be threatened. Of course, the prerequisite for becoming one of these 4 types of cultivators was the possession of a spirit root and becoming a chi refinement warrior. Su Zimo shook his head and said, "Even if I can exchange for spirit stones, I have no use for them." "Why not?" Yao Xue said immediately. "You have to know that one piece of inferior-grade spirit stone is worth 1,000 taels of gold. In some trading houses of the cultivation world, various and numerous kinds of items are available for sale. One will have to use spirit stones to trade for these items. If you have enough spirit stones, you can even assign some assignments and engage the chi refinement warriors to complete them. Of course, the higher the realm that the chi refinement warrior is at, the higher the cost of hiring." Upon hearing this, Su Zimo's heart wavered. He had a vague feeling that these spirit stones might really be of some use. After pondering for a while, Su Zimo asked again, "At what realms were the Joyful 7 at?" Yao Xue said, "Those 2 guarding the spirit monkey were the weakest. They are level 5 chi refinement warriors. The one who escaped and the fat-faced one were the strongest. They are both level 8 chi refinement warriors. The remaining 3 were level 7 chi refinement warriors." Su Zimo nodded. 1 year of training and experience had not been in vain. Now, even level 8 chi refinement warrior was not his match. Su Zimo even had a hunch that level 9 chi refinement warrior would also be in danger if he were to close in on him. Of course, this was on the pretext that the other party would not execute the sword kinesis flight at the first instance. In fact, sword kinesis flight would deplete a lot of spirit chi. In fights and battles, be it chi refinement warrior or foundation establishment cultivator, they would save as much spirit chi as possible for use in attacking the opponent. With both feet on the ground, the other party could still defeat you by controlling the flying sword even if one were to execute sword kinesis flight. Hence, in the midst of killings and fightings, almost none of the chi refinement warriors or foundation establishment cultivators would execute sword kinesis flight and attack at the same time. This would not only cause distraction, but also deplete a lot of spirit chi. Of course, it would be a different matter when it came to the perfected golden core realm. The ability of the perfected golden core was vastly different from the 2 mentioned before. One of the abilities was that the perfected golden core could completely lift himself off the ground without relying on any foreign object. Where do we go to sell these items? Su Zimo had quite a huge harvest yesterday. He had 6 storage bags. There were about 700 pieces of spirit stones in total. In addition, there were other flying swords, elixirs, and so on. Yao Xue said, "In the Great Zhou Dynasty, the largest trading house is the Sky Treasure Pavilion. Sky Treasure Pavilion will set up branch stores in the town of cities where cultivators gather. Most of them are situated in the cities of the various states where the kings live in." "Sky Treasure Pavilion?" Su Zimo said in slight puzzlement. He frowned. "There seems to be one in Songlang City." When he was studying at Songlang City previously, Su Zimo had unintentionally heard of Sky Treasure Pavilion. He heard that it was a place that was even more mysterious than the palace. The gathering of the cultivators? Songlang City, Sky Treasure Pavilion? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes, seemingly pondering about something. Since they are cultivators, why would they intervene in pugilistic and royal court affairs of the mortal world? Su Zimo asked again. Yao Xue explained, "The chi refinement warrior's lifespan is almost similar to that of ordinary people. Even a foundation establishment cultivator's lifespan is at most over 100 years. It is so hard to attain alchemy. When they see that they have no hopes of attaining alchemy, most of the Qi refinement warriors and foundation establishment cultivators will enter the royal court and enjoy a materialistic and carefree life in their remaining years. Of course, when there are traces of cultivators in various states, most of them belong to the Qi refinement warriors. However, it is said that in the Great Zhou dynasty, one of the armies is solely formed by the foundation establishment cultivators, and there are even some perfected golden cores in the dynasty. This is the reason why the Great Zhou dynasty stands towering like a giant and dominates the various states. Countries such as Qi and Yin all belong to the vassal states and had to pay tribute to the Great Zhou dynasty every year. Su Zimo suddenly had a realization. It is no wonder the Great Zhou dynasty hardly intervenes in the battles of the various states. This is because the rise and fall of any states will not threaten the rule of the Great Zhou dynasty. That's right. Yao Xue nodded. After pausing for a moment, Yao Xue smiled and said in a profound manner, that Songlang City is one of the cities in the state, but Sky Treasure Pavilion set up a branch there. It seems that the city lord of this city is conceiving a huge plan. Sky Treasure Pavilion would only set up a branch in places where the cultivators gather. This implied that Songlang City had many cultivators. What did the city lord of Songlang want to do? Was it related to the Su family? Su Zimo vaguely felt that the Su family had very likely gotten itself into a massive vortex, and it would be shattered into pieces in the event of any slip-up. Chapter 24, Sky Treasure Gold Badge. Chapter 24, Sky Treasure Gold Badge. Coincidentally, I also wanted to go to the Sky Treasure Pavilion to trade for something. Where is Songlang City? Bring me there, please. Yao Xue said smilingly. Su Zimo could tell that Yao Xue was very sensitive and considerate. She was worried that he could not enter the Sky Treasure Pavilion on his own, as he was not a Qi refinement warrior. As such, she told him that for fear of hurting his self-esteem. Su Zimo did not expose her lie either. He said, "Let's go. It is also time that I leave Songlang mountain range." Su Zimo packed up many spirit beast hides. Besides these, he also put away the storage bags and flying swords harvested yesterday in Yao Xue's storage bag temporarily to avoid appearing too ostentatious. Outside the cave, the sky was already bright. The spirit monkey curled himself up in a corner with his back facing the two of them. It seemed to be sound asleep. "Let's go. Don't disturb him," Yao Xue said softly. Su Zimo shook his head. He went to the side of the spirit monkey and kicked it without giving any warning. He chided smilingly, "Stop pretending to be dead. Wake up and send me off." This kick was very sudden and forceful. Even Yao Xue was taken aback. Unexpectedly, the spirit monkey who was initially sleeping soundly seemed to be long prepared for this. Swoosh! It dashed up and avoided Su Zimo's underhanded kick. Teeth gnashing and jaws opened, it waved both arms at Su Zimo with a face full of disdain and rolled its eyes from time to time. Su Zimo smiled faintly and said, "If you don't want to send me off, so be it. Look at you. Damn monkey. Be smarter next time. Don't foolishly go lose to the cultivators when you meet them." Humph! The spirit monkey snorted and waved its fists. "I'm leaving." With his back facing the spirit monkey, Su Zimo waved his hands and left the cave with Yao Xue. Not far away, Su Zimo sensed something and instinctively turned back. He saw the spirit monkey standing at the cave entrance and watching him from afar. Under the reflection of the morning glow, the tall and big figure looked a little lonely and desolate. At the sight of Su Zimo turning back, the spirit monkey felt that he could no longer stifle his expression. Lifting its head proudly, it turned and wriggled back into the cave, disappearing from sight. Yao Xue noticed this and said softly, "In the end, it came out as send you off." Su Zimo hung his head silently. Yao Xue said, "Since you can't bear to leave it, bring it along?" After a moment of silence, Su Zimo looked up and smiled. Pretending to be casual, he said, "It's okay. Don't need to bother about him. This monkey has great ambitions. It wants to be the lord of Songlang Mountain Range, a happy and carefree king of the mountains. Yao Xue found a flying sword from the storage bag and suspended it in the air. She jumped onto it. She then turned to Su Zimo and said, "Come up. It'll be faster in this way." Su Zimo did not decline. He leaped onto the flying sword immediately. Swoosh! Lights from the sword flashed. The two had already disappeared from the place that they were at lightning speed. Sword kinesis flight was as graceful and swift as a startled swan. It was breezy, carefree, and indescribable. Su Zimo would be lying to himself if he were to say that he was not envious. However, he was on the path of demon cultivation. He would have to cultivate the core formation section to rise from the ground and fly in the air. After Tendon's transformation, there were 4 major realms: bone strengthening, marrow cleansing, organs refinement, and orifice clearing. He did not know how long it would take. After 1.5 years, he felt completely different upon returning to Songlang City. Looking at Songlang City from the heights while on Yao Xue's sword, Su Zimo discovered that this city was much bigger than he had thought it to be. The two landed in a quiet and deep small alley. There was a wall at the end of the small alley. Before Yao Xue reached the wall, she pointed with her finger and released a flow of spirit qi. Before hitting the wall, it had turned as clear as a water curtain at that instant. Yao Xue explained, "This is a kind of array formation. It has the effect of a visual bulwark. Mortals without spirit qi will not be able to discover this place. There are 2 ways to enter the Sky Treasure Pavilion. First, become a cultivator. Second, possess the Sky Treasure Badge." Su Zimo nodded and followed Yao Xue in crossing the wall. It was spacious and bright on the other side. A sparkling and glittering palace appeared right in front of them. 3 words, Sky Treasure Pavilion, was written on the plaque. Under the bottom right corner of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, there was an exquisite and small word branch, representing that this was a store branch of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. After entering the main hall of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, one could see many Qi refinement warriors loitering around. The main hall was filled with plenty of treasures collected in the cultivation world. There were elixirs, spirit items, talismans, cultivation techniques, secret manuals, and so on. It had everything that one wished for. "Follow me upstairs. These items downstairs are all ordinary ones," Yao Xue whispered. Under the envious gaze of many Qi refinement warriors, Su Zimo followed Yao Xue upstairs. These Qi refinement warriors were aware that only Foundation establishment cultivators or those with the Sky Treasure Badge could be granted access to the 2nd floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, it was too difficult to attain a Sky Treasure Badge. Even the most inferior grade Sky Treasure Bronze Badge required a certain number of spirit stones in exchange for the eligibility. On the 2nd floor, there were obviously less cultivation world treasures. However, each of the items looked better than those downstairs. Apart from a few Qi refinement warriors who were selling items, no one else was present. It was very quiet. Yao Xue knocked on the table. She flashed a piece of exquisite gold badge and said in a low voice, "Get your pavilion manager out." The Qi refinement warrior was startled instantly. He responded to the rudeness with a flattering smile. "Senior, please wait here for a moment." Very soon, a figure dressed like a businessman hurried over. He was rather plump but swift in his movements. "Selling something." Yao Xue went straight to the point. She took out the hundreds of spirit beast hides, various elixirs, and the few flying swords. Su Zimo had already planned to sell everything and exchange them for spirit stones. It will be a total of 3,070 pieces of inferior grade spirit stones. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion calculated before he wiped his sweat and said. Yao Xue waved her hands and said undoubtedly, "Let's round it to 3,100. This okay?" The manager hesitated slightly but agreed thereafter. Su Zimo suddenly realized that Yao Xue seemed to be born of an extraordinary origin. Every move of hers was filled with a strong aura of elegance. 3,100 pieces of spirit stones, coupled with the 700 other pieces in the storage bags of the Joyful Seven, Su Zimo had close to 4,000 spirit stones now. This was also considered a huge wealth amongst the high-level Qi refinement warriors. How do you intend to use this sum of spirit stones? Yao Xue asked. Su Zimo had some plans in his heart. He said in a deep voice, I want to refine 2 weapons, 1 bow and 1 saber. After the battle with Qi refinement warriors at Songlang Mountain Range, Su Zimo discovered his own weakness. He was unable to leave the ground and fly in the sky. If he were to encounter Qi refinement warriors who use sword kinesis flight in the future, Su Zimo would deal with them with his bow and arrows. As for the saber, apart from protecting himself and attacking the enemy, it could also block the spirit item of the Qi refinement warrior and take the chance to reduce the distance separating them. Besides inferior grade, middle grade, superior grade, supreme grade weapons, there was also another type of spirit weapon called pseudo-spirit weapon. The reasons why spirit weapons were powerful were twofold. On one hand, the materials used to refine the weapons were rare spirit items. On the other hand, after numerous hammering and refining by the weapon refinement master, the impurities had been removed. The weapon would not break easily as it was both hard and strong. Most importantly, one had to look at the spirit pattern condensed on it to analyze the grade of the spirit weapon. An inferior grade spirit weapon would have 1 spirit pattern. Amongst the Joyful 7, 2 of them had flying swords of this grade. The flying sword in Yao Xue's hands was a middle grade spirit weapon as it had 2 spirit patterns. Weapons with 3 spirit patterns were superior grade while those with 4 spirit patterns were of supreme grade. Before the cultivators engaged in a fight, it would inject the spirit qi into the spirit weapon. This would invigorate the spirit pattern to shine. The more lines there were, the more powerful the spirit weapon. The so-called pseudo-spirit weapon was referring to weapons made of the same materials as the real ones. They were also made by the weapon refinement master, but there was no spirit pattern condensed on them. To Su Zimo, whether the weapons had spirit pattern or not did not make a difference. He could not invigorate them at all. As long as the weapon was strong and hard enough to block the impact of spirit weapons and cause death and injury to the Qi refinement warrior, it would suffice. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion said, "It costs very little to refine 2 pseudo-spirit weapons. Including the costs of materials and hiring the weapon refinement master, a few hundred inferior-grade spirit stones are enough." How long will it take? Su Zimo could feel that the Su family was going to face a calamity soon. He wanted to improve his ability as soon as possible. At least 3 days. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said. On a separate note, it is easy to refine the bow but not the bowstring. Yao Xue pointed at Su Zimo's waist and smiled gently. The python tendon on your waist can be used as a bowstring. Su Zimo was still clad in a beast hide, and a python tendon was used as a belt. Yao Xue reached out her hands and gently pushed Su Zimo, covering her nose. Quickly bathe and change your clothes. You can remove the python tendon then. Su Zimo coughed lightly to conceal his embarrassment. He quickly followed the 2 female waiting staff and left the 2nd floor of Sky Treasure Pavilion temporarily. Not long after, Su Zimo returned to the Sky Treasure Pavilion. When Yao Xue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, she could not help feeling stunned. At this moment, Su Zimo was dressed in a green robe. He had shaved away his stubble. Bright, clear eyes and delicate features, he exuded a strong, scholarly aura. He was like a different person from before. Who is this? Yao Xue turned both her palms, leaned forward slightly, and moved closer to him. She tilted her head and asked with a trace of a smile in her eyes. Su Zimo's gaze was bright and clear. He smiled but was silent. A young master, indeed. Addressing you as young Master Su is really not wrong. Yao Xue smiled and said. Su Zimo could barely endure this. He cupped his fists and said, Miss Yao Xue, you're being humorous. All right, I'll not tease you anymore. Yao Xue waved her hands and asked, what do you intend to use the remaining spirit stones for? How many spirit stones do I need to hire a Qi refinement warrior? Su Zimo planned to hire 1 Qi refinement warrior to protect the Su family. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said, this depends on the level that the Qi refinement warrior is at. The higher the better. For a level 7 Chi Refinement Warrior, 5 pieces of inferior grade spirit stones a day will be enough. For a level 8 Chi Refinement Warrior, you need 10 pieces a day. For a level 9 Chi Refinement Warrior, you need 100 pieces. Su Zimo did some mental calculations. He had a total of over 3,000 pieces of spirit stones left. Of course, it was good to hire a level 9 Chi Refinement Warrior. However, he only had enough spirit stones to hire one of them for a month. No one could guarantee when the danger would come. On the other hand, hiring a level 8 Chi Refinement Warrior could protect the Su family for an entire year. It was relatively more cost-effective. After pondering deeply for a while, Su Zimo said, I'll hire a level 8 Chi Refinement Warrior for a period of 1 year. Okay. The manager waved his hands. One of the female waiting staff nodded and walked towards the main hall on the first floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. Yao Xue explained, there are always new missions at the main hall of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. If the Chi Refinement Warriors are interested in them, they will look for the hirers accordingly. After pausing for a while, Yao Xue passed the piece of gold badge in her hands to Su Zimo. She said, this is the Sky Treasure Pavilion gold badge. With this badge, you can get half the price for every item of purchase when you come here next time. So much? Su Zimo was shocked. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion, who was standing at the side, explained, there are 3 types of badges in the Sky Treasure Pavilion. The lowest grade is the bronze badge, which will give you a 10% discount. Next is the silver badge that gives a 20% discount, followed by the gold badge. This item is too precious and costly. I can't accept it. Upon hearing the manager's explanation, how could Su Zimo not know how precious this gold badge was? Accept it. I still have more of it. Not allowing any further deliberations, Yao Xue tucked the item into Su Zimo's arms and reminded him, you have to hide it well and don't let anyone see it. Otherwise, you will attract trouble easily. Su Zimo frowned and wanted to decline again. Yao Xue's face turned stiff. You saved my life. Isn't my life worth this piece of lousy gold badge? Su Zimo was speechless. The manager at the side rolled his eyes continuously, muttering in his heart, lousy gold badge. There are less than 10 such gold badges in the entire Great Zhou dynasty. This madam is so generous. I don't know where this poor lad's good fortune came from. At this moment, Su Zimo was unaware that the Sky Treasure gold badge in his hands was not an ordinary one. Even if he had the ordinary Sky Treasure gold badge, he could only get a 30% discount at the Sky Treasure Pavilion. There was only one place with Sky Treasure gold badges that could give a 50% discount. Chapter 25, Trouble. Chapter 25, Trouble. After stepping out of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, it was already close to noon. Su Zimo turned and looked at Yao Xue. He said sincerely, I must thank Miss Yao Xue for today's matter. Call me Yao Xue. That. Okay then. Su Zimo hesitated slightly before he agreed. At the sight of Su Zimo nodding, Yao Xue pursed her lips and smiled. She said immediately, I'll call you Zimo then. Su Zimo. Yao Xue took a sideways glance at Su Zimo and asked, where will Zimo be going next? Su Zimo pondered deeply and said, I have to stay in Songlang City for a few days to wait for the 2 spirit weapons to be refined. At the same time, I will check out if any level 8 Chi Refinement Warriors are taking up the mission. After thinking, Yao Xue said, I'll return to my clan then. I won't keep you company. Have a good trip. We will meet again if we have fate. Su Zimo nodded. Yao Xue jumped onto the flying sword. When she was about to leave the Sky Treasure Pavilion, she suddenly looked back and gave a charming smile. Not if we have fate. We will definitely meet again. Upon finishing her words, Yao Xue leaped onto her sword and left. She disappeared from Su Zimo's sight soon after. Su Zimo did not think much of it. He left the small alley of the Sky Treasure Pavilion and looked for an inn nearby to stay at. 3 days later, in the mansion of the city lord, Chao Gang, the wolf guard, stepped in and bowed to pay his respects. He said in a low voice, City Lord, my subordinates guard saw Su Zimo in the city. The strange thing is that, This lad seemed to have appeared out of thin air. No one saw him entering the city. Luo Tianwu, the city lord of Songlang City, nodded and said, "Yes, perhaps we have been negligent. No need to worry. I have long received news of this and sent someone to test him. Since we are making use of him to kill, we have to test if this blade is sharp enough. I heard that, some time ago, Su Hong had a narrow escape from death in the capital of the country of Yin. 16 years of preparation work fell short in the last battle. He nearly lost his life. Now, the capital of the country of Yin is tightly guarded. Many Qi refinement warriors were gathered near the king of Yin. What can this Su Zimo do?" Chao Gang frowned slightly. Luo Tianwu smiled and said, "Su Hong has black armored cavalry under his wings. He was powerful, but also too ambitious. It is expected that his assassination of the king of Yin would fail. But this second young master Su is different. No one views him as a threat. The more you neglect one's existence, the easier it is for him to carry out a successful assassination." Su Zimo had been in Songlang City for 3 days, but did not hear any news from Sky Treasure Pavilion. The hiring of Qi Refinement Warrior was not as easy as he expected it to be. Furthermore, he wanted to hire a level 8 Qi Refinement Warrior. Su Zimo felt a little vexed. He was prepared to have a meal at the first floor of the inn. Just as he arrived downstairs, he could hear people sneering. Someone said in an eccentric manner, "Yo, isn't this second young master Su who has been reduced to an inferior commoner? Why do you still have the shame to come to Songlang City?" Su Zimo slanted his eyes and saw a seemingly wealthy young man with a graceful bearing waving a fan. Sneering continuously, he had a look of contempt on his face. 2 middle-aged men were by his sides. They were bright-eyed and had a restrained aura. They were seemingly guarding the young man who was sitting in between them. This young man's name was Chuliang. He could not take the hardship of learning martial arts, but was also reluctant to focus on his studies quietly. With the power of his family clan as his backing, he lounged around all day long, bullying the young and weak. Su Zimo had some impression of this man as he had been his classmate back then when studying in Songlang City previously. Although he could not see eye to eye with this man's conduct, the two never had any animosity between them. Su Zimo cast a faint glance at Chuliang. His gaze was calm and his expression normal. He then turned back and ascended the stairs. The Su family already had enemies on another land. Su Zimo did not wish to attract more trouble. It was pointless to make more enemies. Chuliang sneered. "Boss Li, when did your inn start to take in inferior commoners? Break both legs of this inferior commoner and throw him out, in case he affects my appetite." The boss of the inn looked like he was in a difficult position. "Yes? You want to break both my legs?" Su Zimo halted his steps and turned gradually, his gaze sweeping across the main lobby. The guests in the inn did not seem to be ordinary commoners. They had weapons on the table beside them. Although they were also eating and drinking, their gazes inadvertently landed on him. Moreover, there were traces of hostility in their eyes. This was not a chance encounter. The other party deliberately came here to seek trouble. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had figured it out. Su Zimo strode towards Chuliang. The 2 middle-aged men by Chuliang's side showed obvious signs of nervousness. The muscles tightened as they lowered their palms, placed them on the weapon on the waist. Su Zimo smiled and sat on the seat opposite Chuliang. "Who told you to sit down?" Chuliang hollered. Bang! He slammed his hands on the table. Clang! One after another, the surrounding diners rose from their seats, unsheathing their weapons. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged. Without looking sideways, he did not seem bothered as he took Chuliang's wine jar and poured himself a cup of wine. The 2 middle-aged men opposite him looked grave and solemn. They moved towards the middle, blocking Chuliang behind them. Su Zimo had not made any moves and did not even reveal any trace of murderous aura. Yet, the 2 middle-aged men felt uneasy and had chills running up their spines. "The 2 of you are perfected Khanate experts, right?" Su Zimo lifted the wine cup and asked casually. "So what if we are?" One of them responded. "The 2 of you." Su Zimo raised his head and drained the strong wine in his cup. He then shook his head. He continued to say, "Won't be able to protect him." The moment he put down the wine cup, Su Zimo made his move. Snap! The wine cup dropped on the tabletop. The fall was neither hard nor soft, but the entire table suddenly split open. Su Zimo closed in and flipped his palms, enshrouding the top of heads of the two perfected Khanate experts. His moves were sudden, and he attacked two people at the same time. The two middle-aged men were terrified. The aura of Su Zimo's palm strike was powerful and suffocating. They could even smell a gust of bloody stench at the wave of his palm. In the blink of an eye, the graceful scholar had transformed into a man-eating beast. The two men unsheathed their weapons immediately to block the attack. Swoosh! There was a deafening and crisp sound. Two extremely sharp weapons had actually been slammed to pieces by Su Zimo's palm. They were scattered on the ground. Bang! Bang! Su Zimo moved forward and kicked both his legs casually. The two Khanate experts were hurled outside. Horror filled their eyes. Their chests were crushed, and they were vomiting fresh blood. They were almost dead. In comparison to the spirit beasts in Songlang Mountain Range, the close combat techniques of the two men before him were really too poor. If Su Zimo were to use all of his strength, the two of them, including their weapons, would be crushed instantly with the pressure of this palm. Chu Liang was so scared that his face was drained of all colors. Never did he expect that the two Khanate experts that he relied on most would turn invalid in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, Su Zimo was already nearing him. Su Zimo grabbed his neck and lifted him up in the air. It was too fast. When Chu Liang landed in Su Zimo's hands, the surrounding diners had not even recovered from their shock. No matter how much they wanted to dash forward, they were fearful of the consequences and full of reservations. "What are you doing?" "Release my family's young master." A loud and stern voice rang from the surrounding. Su Zimo did not seem to have heard it. He just looked at Chu Liang with an imperceptible smile on his face. "I heard that you want to break both of my legs?" Ee. Chu Liang's neck was strangled. His face turned purplish-blue as he let out a weird sound from his mouth. Su Zimo's gaze gradually turned cold. He swung his legs. Pa! Pa! Sounds of bones cracking could be heard coming from Chu Liang's knees. They had been crushed by Su Zimo's kick in that instant. Chu Liang was in so much pain that beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His entire body was shivering, but he could not bring himself to say a word. "Who told you to come?" Su Zimo pressed him. Chu Liang could not catch his breath. He rolled his eyes and looked like he was going to faint at any point in time. At this very moment, a loud shout could be heard from outside the door. "Stop!" A man clad in armor with a firm and resolute face was standing at the entrance of the inn. He was leading numerous guards. He dashed in with large and vigorous slides. This man was none other than Chao Gang, one of the 5 wolf guards of Songlang City. "Fighting is forbidden in the city. Su Zimo, quickly release that man." Chao Gang stepped forward and hollered. At the same time, Chao Gang also moved forward 2 steps and whispered into Su Zimo's ears. "Second young master Su, the city lord would like to meet you." Su Zimo narrowed both his eyes. A thought flashed in his mind, and he vaguely understood what was happening. Su Zimo waved his hands and flung Chu Liang aside nonchalantly. "Bring criminal Su Zimo back to the city lord." Chao Gang shouted again. Numerous guards behind him moved forward and surrounded Su Zimo. Yet, no one cuffed him up. Su Zimo was expressionless, but he sneered in his heart. He followed Chao Gang and the group and left the inn. Chapter 26, Heard About the Secret. Chapter 26, Heard About the Secret. This was the first meeting between Su Zimo and the city lord of Songlang City. It was very difficult to read the city lord's mind just by looking into his eyes. He was expressionless and seemingly very deep and scheming. Luo Tianwu was also sizing up Su Zimo at the same time. His first impression of Su Zimo was a cultured and polite man, no different from other scholars. If he had not known in advance the many deeds of Su Zimo in Pingyang Town, It was very hard for Luo Tianwu to imagine that such a weak and frail-looking scholar could actually subdue the two big family clans. Immediately after, he sensed that Su Zimo was mysterious and unfathomable. The gazes of both parties collided in midair. Very soon after, Luo Tianwu revealed a smile first. He said in a loud and clear voice, "I've long heard about the famous second young master Su. We finally meet today. Please have a seat." From the side, a slouching old servant dressed in a gray robe walked over. Gray-haired, he had a gaunt face and cloudy eyes. He carried a chair and put it carefully in front of Su Zimo. Su Zimo's gaze seemed casual as it swept across the old servant. He did not decline and took the seat immediately. Luo Tianwu was very polite to him. However, there was more to this case, and it became more evident that this meeting was not so simple. There must be something going on when things occur out of the ordinary. What was the status, power, and prestige of a city lord? Luo Tianwu had never invited Su Zimo when the latter attained scholarly honors previously, much less his inferior status currently. The gray-robed old servant stood beside Su Zimo and filled a cup of tea for Su Zimo respectfully. Su Zimo's thoughts were deep as he cast a profound gaze at the gray-robed old servant. With an imperceptible smile, he said, "You served me tea. This must have been hard on you." The gray-robed old servant paused for a moment. He placed the teapot on the table without any expression. Thereafter, he retreated to stand behind Luo Tianwu and did not utter a word. Upon hearing this, a beam of light flashed across Luo Tianwu's eyes but disappeared after a moment. Su Zimo's words seemed unintentional, but others were not sure of the implied meaning. He could be mocking himself for his inferior status or pitying the gray-robed old servant for his old age. Of course, there was another possibility. This lad had already seen through the Qi refinement warrior identity of this old servant dressed in shabby and gray clothes. This fellow is not easy to deal with. Luo Tianwu furrowed his brows secretly. The gray-robed old servant had hid himself very well. Yet, he could not deceive the spirit perception that Su Zimo had attained via his near-death experiences. Without a word, Su Zimo raised his teacup and sipped tea in a leisurely manner. Luo Tianwu was silent too. His fingertips were knocking on the table neither lightly nor hard. About 8 minutes passed. The pin-drop silence in the room was frightening. Only sounds of fingertips knocking on the table were resonating. The atmosphere was stifling. The smile on Luo Tianwu's face had already disappeared. In such a circumstance, ordinary people would not be able to withstand the pressure. They would have long spoken up to ease the atmosphere. However, right from the beginning, Su Zimo's expression did not change the slightest bit. His gaze was as calm as an old monk who was meditating. This lad is only 18 years old, and he has such a calm and mature temperament. It is very tricky to deal with him. Luo Tianwu muttered in his heart. He was already feeling a little restless. In actual fact, this was a tactic of psychological pressure. Whoever could not endure the situation and spoke would inevitably be on the back foot. Luo Tianwu had initially wanted to subdue Su Zimo in the first instance. However, he did not expect to hit him on the wrong spot. He felt very upset. "Isn't second young master Su curious about why I invited you today?" Luo Tianwu asked smilingly. Su Zimo put down his teacup in a leisurely manner and glanced sideways at Luo Tianwu. He said calmly, "May I ask City Lord to give me an explicit reason?" The two young masters of the Su family are both cream of the crop. Young Master Su's patience and endurance, and second young Master Su hiding your light under a bushel. The 5 wolf guards under my wings, and me admire you guys greatly. Luo Tianwu praised. Su Zimo frowned slightly and said, "City Lord, you don't need to probe further. Please come straight to the point. You're straightforward. I admire people like second young Master Su." Luo Tianwu gave a slight smile. "Your older brother has failed to assassinate the king of Yin. He is severely injured and bedridden now. I know that second young Master Su's heart must be filled with fury." Upon hearing this, Su Zimo's countenance changed. Older brother assassinated the king of Yin? He was injured? Su Zimo had not returned for a year. Hence, he did not know that such a severe matter had happened to the Su family. Why did older brother assassinate the king of Yin? Could the king of Yin be the Su family's enemy? Observing the change in Su Zimo's expression, Luo Tianwu was slightly stunned. He asked, "Don't tell me that second young master Su doesn't know about this?" "I am not aware." Su Zimo shook his head and endured the urge to rush back to Pingyang town. Luo Tianwu felt that he had regained some victory with this. He revealed a slight smile and said, "Actually, I still admire and respect Su Mu, Lord Wooding, the most. How powerful and prestigious were the black armored cavalry under his wings then? Which of the surrounding states doesn't know the famous Su Mu? It is sheer pity." Su Mu. Upon hearing this name, for some unknown reason, Su Zimo seemingly felt pangs of pain in his heart. Su Zimo had already sensed that this man called Su Mu was very likely his father. He only heard Luo Tianwu continuing with his words, 16 years ago, we heard that Su Mu had been framed and schemed against by villains. The king of Yin gave orders to annihilate his entire family. At that time, I was also wringing my fists in sorrow and pain. I mourned for the loss of an outstanding hero. Fortunately, Lord Wooding's bloodline is still in existence. The two young masters of the Su family escaped. Upon hearing this, Su Zimo already understood in his heart. He had found the answers to many of his doubts. Without a word, Su Zimo's lanky body rose and headed outside. "Where is second young master Su going?" Luo Tianwu asked quickly. Su Zimo's face was solemn. He turned and looked at Luo Tianwu. Visible red veins could be seen in his eyes. It was extremely frightening. Luo Tianwu was stunned. The gray-robed old man behind him moved a step back instinctively. He slipped his hands into his chest and searched the storage bag inside. In fact, Luo Tianwu did not know that Su Zimo was unaware of the Su family's background. He did not expect that Su Zimo would react so greatly. Luo Tianwu calmed himself down and took a deep breath. He said in a deep voice, "I know that second young master Su is keen to take revenge. I also wish to seek justice for Lord Wooding. Why don't we do this? I have spies in the city where the king of Yin lives in. I can try my best to help second young master Su get close to the king of Yin. With second young master Su's capability, we will definitely be able to execute the king of Yin and avenge Lord Wooding if we join forces." Su Zimo shut his eyes. After some time, he gradually opened them. The blood color in his eyes slowly faded and his eyes regained brightness and clarity. "This is a private vendetta of the Su family. Why should I bother the city lord?" Su Zimo asked. Luo Tianwu smiled and said, "Lord Wooding is the person that I admire most in my life. You can only deceive children with such words." Before Luo Tianwu could finish his words, Su Zimo interrupted him ruthlessly. Su Zimo's words were considered a great form of disrespect for the city lord. However, the smile on Luo Tianwu's face did not lessen. He continued to say, "Second young master Su is a little angered. You're the one who sent Chu Liang to the inn, right?" Su Zimo interrupted Luo Tianwu again and said calmly. Luo Tianwu retracted his smile. There was a flash of murderous intent in his eyes, but it disappeared a moment later. He questioned back, "What makes second young master Su say that?" "From the moment that I made the first move till I subdued Chu Liang, it only took a duration of 10 breaths." Su Zimo pointed to Chao Gang at the side and added. Guard Chao suddenly dashed in. It's a little too fast. It was as if this had been prearranged. I only happened to pass by," Chao Gang explained hurriedly. Luo Tianwu waved his hands to stop Chao Gang from continuing with his words. It was just a short interaction and Luo Tianwu realized that this kind of small tricks could not deceive the person before him. To force an explanation would only make a joke out of themselves. Su Zimo gave a sneer and turned back. He paused his steps when he reached the doorsteps and said calmly, "If City Lord Luo is sincere in helping the Su family, I, Su Zimo, will naturally be grateful to you. However, I don't like to be made use of by others. City Lord Luo, you better watch your conduct." Having finished his words, Su Zimo left without even turning back. When Su Zimo's figure disappeared from the residence of the city lord, Luo Tianwu's expression turned solemn and sinister. There was already a handprint on the sandalwood table beside him. This green and young lad. He actually dared to be so arrogant in front of me. Luo Tianwu was enraged. He gritted his teeth and scolded. After some time, Luo Tianwu gave a long sigh. He turned and asked, "Sir, how do you feel about this lad?" At this moment, the gray-robed old servant straightened his back. His eyes were clear and bright. There were no signs of the earlier old and fatigued look. When he heard Luo Tianwu's question, he said in a deep voice, "Second young Master Su is not simple. Although he is not a Qi refinement warrior, he could see through my identity as a Qi refinement warrior with one glance. This lad's hands are certainly stained with a lot of fresh blood. When he was angered earlier, I could feel trepidation in my heart. He is a very dangerous man." "Oh." Luo Tianwu raised his brows slightly. He asked again, "What will happen if you fight with him?" The gray-robed old servant's expression was proud. He said, "I am a level 8 Qi refinement warrior. How can a mortal compete with me?" However, after pausing for a while, the gray-robed old servant changed his stance. Given this lad's temperament and ability, he has a high chance of success in assassinating the King of Yin. As to whether he could escape the capital alive, haha, the gray-robed old servant smiled but did not speak a word. "I am not concerned whether he can escape the capital where the King of Yin lives at. As long as the King of Yin is dead, the country will become leaderless and there will certainly be chaos. It will be the best time for me to invade the city and declare myself as the king." Luo Tianwu smiled. Everything was under his control. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.